walk back from breakfast. As soon as we do, I just hear, boom, big explosion, right? I dive underneath the picnic tables at the smoke pit. Like, I charge my 240. I'm like, what the hell's going on? My first sergeant comes running out of the schoolhouse, and he's like, yeah, we fucking got him. We got him. My name is Danny Szczakowski. I served 10 years as an active duty airborne infantryman in the 82nd Airborne Division, the 173rd, from 2011 to 2021. So I was born in Hereford, Texas in May of '88. I have three siblings, 2 sisters, and an older brother. Everybody's older. My parents immigrated here from Poland in the late 70s. They were in the meat processing industry. Like, that's what they did. It's a big immigrant population that does that job. My family's kind of messed up. Even as a kid, I realized my sisters and my brother were doing everything that they can to get out of the house as quick as possible. My dad, he was a severe alcoholic. My mom, sweetest lady in the world, never seen her cuss or drink alcohol or nothing. She was a good woman, good mom. Chose the wrong guy. And my sisters started their families very young. I think they were both either 16 or 17. And we were living in West Texas at this time. My parents were working for Cargill, which is like a big beef processor. So I remember at a really young age, my sisters being both pregnant. You know, fortunately, they were there to raise me for the first few years. My brother's 10 years older than me. I think he left the house when he was 15, I think. And my sisters were out of the house at like 17. Everybody quit school. Nobody graduated high school. So I was kind of, after 4 or 5 years old, I was kind of an only child, being raised by 2 immigrant parents that didn't speak English. My dad was dragging us from place to place. So I was in West Texas for 4 or 5 years. From West Texas, we moved to Minnesota. I was in Minnesota for a year, maybe a little bit less. Something happened with my dad's job, so we moved to Wisconsin for a year or 2, and then back to another town in Wisconsin, and then from there we went back to Minnesota, and my dad got his 4th or 5th DUI. He got locked up for I think like 6 months, and we lost everything that we had up to that point. And my mom and me went back to New Mexico, where my sisters stayed, and lived with them for the next year or so. At this point, my mom started to get sick. She was diagnosed with cancer when I was like 11. I had already started to rebel. I hated school. I was never good at sitting down and listening to people telling me what to do. I couldn't tell you why I was like that until these last few years when I kind of put everything together. In one of those moves where we were in Wisconsin, like I said, both my parents were working there in the meat processing industry. And that's what my dad was chasing. Like, we'd go from Texas to Minnesota because there's a good job up there, and we would start to do well, and he would screw it up. He'd get into a fight, he'd get a DUI, he'd go to jail. So we'd pack all our stuff and move to the next town. Sometime, I believe when I was like 5 or 6 years old in one of those cities, I was going to a babysitter every day. And, you know, I've never really talked about this as an adult, but I was sexually assaulted by somebody affiliated with my babysitter. My babysitter was a woman. That's what I remember. Whoever sexually assaulted me was a man. And I've completely suppressed that in my memory. It's hard to talk about. I mean, I'm glad I'm finally talking about it, but it's so suppressed in my memory that I don't even remember much about it. But it happened on multiple occasions. And throughout my childhood, you know, in between all these moves and stuff, like, school wasn't my thing. I was rebelling. I was running away from home. I mean, as a young child, 7, 8 years old, I'd go off and be away from home for days at a time. My brother and sisters would pop into my life once in a while, but as I previously stated, like, our family was so corrupt, I guess is a good way to put it, that everybody just went off and started their own family as quickly as they could because they didn't want nothing to do with what we had going on. But I was young and I had to deal with it, and I had just gone through, that traumatic experience. And it's so suppressed that I don't even know if I told my parents about it. Does that, I don't know. I guess it makes sense to me. They both died, which I'll talk about, but I never asked them if, I told them anything about that. But anyway, both my parents passed, yeah. My mom died of cancer in 2012, right before my first deployment. And my dad, he was just a piece of crap, man. He was not a good person. He had severe alcohol problems. He couldn't hold down a job. He could hold down a job to a certain point, but after a year, he would screw everything up. We'd have to move, and that's how it kind of was. When he finally got locked up in Minnesota, my mom and I went to live with my sisters in New Mexico. We kind of got established. We lived with my sister for a little bit. My sister helped us out. This is as my mom's getting sick. She doesn't know she has cancer yet. She's just not feeling well all the time. She was like a maid at a hotel. My dad showed back up, kind of like, hey, just back into our lives out of nowhere. I have a story I'll talk about kind of when I was living in Arcadia, Wisconsin. My childhood was, other than the trauma, like I tried as hard as I could to be normal. Like that was my goal, but I wasn't normal. My parents didn't speak English. That stuff happened. So I was always trying to find myself as a child. So I remember one summer day, I'm at the swimming pool with my friends. I have friends and stuff. I'm not ostracized by that. I'm still making friends in school. It's just I keep having to make new friends every city we'd go to. And I jumped on the diving board. I slipped, cracked my ribs, fell to the bottom of the pool. Lifeguard jumps in, grabs me, and they're like, hey, we have to take you home. Like, you're hurt. We got to take you to your parents. But at this time, we were living underneath above a bar. We lived underneath the bar, and then we moved above the bar. And I was so embarrassed about what my home was that as we got closer to my house, I was like, hey, I'm good. Like, physically cracked ribs, it's hard for me to breathe, but I was so embarrassed about where we lived that I just kept telling them, like, hey, this is good. Like, you can leave me here. I'll walk home. And they're like, no, we have to. And I'm like, my mom isn't home. So they took me home, and I was so embarrassed about where I lived that I kind of just walked into the house and, went to my room. So my dad, moving forward, my dad comes back into our lives. I think I'm 11, maybe 12, and my mom gets diagnosed with cervical cancer, like stage 2, like it's pretty severe. So on top of everything else I got going on in life, now it's summertime in between like my 6th and 7th grade year. I'm having to go every single day with my mom to get radiation and chemo once a week. And my brother, who moved up to Wisconsin with us, one of those moves, and he just stayed there. He's been there ever since. He's had the same job or worked for the same people for the last 20 years. So he stayed up there. My brother's 10 years older than me. I'm 11, 12 during this time when my mom gets diagnosed, having to take her every single day to radiation and chemotherapy and stuff. And I started hanging around with the wrong people. I had friends. I had 2 groups of friends. I had my normal friends, and then I had my friends that got in trouble a lot. And I would pick the group that I was going with for the day. I'd go with my normal friends who have wonderful lives and wonderful families, and we'd go play baseball and sports and stuff, or I'd go with my other friends and we'd be breaking into cars and stealing stereos and stuff like that. And I think my brothers recognized that I was going down a bad path, and he came down during that summer, and he picked me up and he took me back to Wisconsin for what would be my freshman year, junior year, sophomore year. So this was in between my 8th and 9th grade year. That's when I think my mom was sick for an entire year or 2 before he kind of recognized my patterns of behavior and stuff. And he was a young man. I was 13, he was 23 years old, and he came down and picked me up. and he took me back to Wisconsin. And out of my whole childhood up to that point, I had never experienced like just normal life. We were always bouncing around. We were always going everywhere. And my brother made a huge effort to just give me normality. Like, you're gonna go to school, you're gonna get good grades, I'll buy you the things that you need. Like, up to that point, I'd never owned like name brand shoes or name brand clothes or anything. My brother recognized this from his childhood and everything that he went through, and he just made my life normal. So I started playing sports. School and I still weren't getting along, but I was trying. You know, I was trying to do the right thing, but it still wasn't for me. But I was playing football, basketball. He got me into snowboarding, golf, like stuff like that, just to keep me active and out of trouble. And he had a stepson that he raised from the time that he was a baby boy. And he was kind of like my little brother. Like, we were like our own little family. We were just really young. My brother was in his 20s. My nephew, who I considered my nephew or my little brother, was 7 or 8. And we kind of grew up together. And like I said, I was there freshman year, junior year, or sophomore year, junior year. And then my junior year summer, my mom got really sick. She had to have like part of her stomach taken out. She got a colostomy bag because she couldn't control her bowel movements. She had part of her intestine taken out, and she lost like 90 pounds. She was already a small woman. And my dad, being the great person that he is, stole her Social Security check and moved to the East Coast with some chick. At this time, I didn't hate my dad. I just didn't like him. So I went down my junior year summer, and against everything my brother was telling me to do, I stayed there. And I started my senior year in New Mexico, taking care of my mom, or at least kind of just being there for her. Like, I'm like 17 at this time, so how much can I really take care of her? But I'll go to work, I'll try to make money, and I'll go to school. Obviously, I chose work over school. Went to my first 2 semesters of high school, I went to my first semester of high school and then quit. I had like maybe 3 or 4 classes left and I could have graduated, but I didn't. I started working for my brother-in-law as like a dishwasher at a restaurant. He was like the manager of the restaurant, and met a group of friends there. Everybody was kind of like a social outcast. Like they were like the metalheads, you know, and one day I'm sitting there washing dishes and all these guys are like, hey man, like you can come and hang out with us. And at this time, I kind of didn't, like the friends that I had before I left to go to Wisconsin, like aren't really in my life. They kind of are. And I didn't have new friends yet because I'd only been there a little bit. So I latched onto them pretty hard. Ended up like moving in. They gave me a room at their house. We had this big party house. We just threw huge parties, you know, smoking weed, drinking, girls, all that stuff. I call it like my college years because I lived there when I was 17 till I was about 18, 19 years old, maybe almost 19. And that's all we did was just party and play guitar and go to like metal shows, like heavy metal shows, stuff like that. Like I found my people is what I thought. So I kind of hung out with them for a little bit, and we broke apart. Like people went their different ways. People got into relationships. People got their own houses and stuff, and I moved in with another group of people. I started working for the agriculture industry in West Texas, eastern New Mexico. Agriculture is huge, especially like cattle and beef production and stuff like that. Got a job like feeding cattle at this huge cow operation with like 300,000 cattle. I drove a truck, fed them twice a day. It paid good money. I started getting more and more into like agriculture and stuff like that. Mind you, I'm just searching for who I am as a young man at this point. Ended up getting a pretty good job there where I administered the medicine to the cattle. So I was kind of like a veterinary assistant. And I got that job through the veterinarian that ran the whole thing. I just told myself, I'm gonna learn more about this. I'm gonna get into like horses and cowboy stuff. And basically the veterinarian told me I have no chance at being a veterinarian. Like I'm just help, you know, but I'm good at giving shots in the vein. And it kind of crushed me. So I was just going through my day by day, doing my job, going home. This is when Call of Duty first came out. I'm playing Call of Duty, I'm smoking a lot of weed, I'm waking up, I'm going to work, and it's just this relentless motion of nothingness, you know, like I'm not fulfilled at all. And I get to work one day, I'm bragging to all these cowboys about how good I am at Call of Duty and stuff, and one of these cowboys looks at me and says, unless you're gonna do this shit in real life, shut the fuck up. I kind of put my head down and my tail between my legs, you know, and went about my day and went home that night. And I thought to myself, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go talk to a recruiter. I'm gonna see what happens. I get done with work the next day and I walk into the recruiter's office, and you know, I like smell like cow shit. I got long hair, a patchy beard. I'm a pothead. And I walk in and my recruiter's there. I'm gonna give him a shout out. His name's Sergeant Butler. I was his first recruit ever. And he was a fellow Airborne Infantryman, so it was pretty cool. And I walk in and I say, hey, I want to Army. Like, how do you Army? And he barely looked at me, but he reached under his desk, pulled out a piss cup, put it on the desk, and he said, can you pass this? And I said, nope. And he said, come back when you can. And I said, all right. So I walked out of the office. I mean, just that quick. I walked in, said that, he said what he said, and I walked back out. So it was kind of like, oh, damn. Like, all right, like, let me take this kind of serious. So I went home and I started talking to friends and stuff, and they're like, dude, you're crazy. Like, it's full on war right now. Like, people are dying. So I would like get online and look up like how many casualties were that day or whatever. In this meantime that I was making the decision of either joining or not. And I'm seeing like 4 or 5 KIAs a day, you know, like 20, 30 wounded in action. There used to be a website, you could track all that by the day. So I'm like, do I really want to do this? Like, yes. I just made the decision, you know, I said, screw it, and stopped smoking weed, cut my hair. I had a bunch of piercings in my face. I took them piercings out, kind of started carrying myself a little bit better with a little more pride, knowing I'm going to try to do whatever I'm going to do here. And 30 days later, I walked back in there and they didn't even recognize me. My recruiters, I had drastically changed in 30 days so much, they didn't even know I was who I was in the first place. And they said, all right, we'll take you serious now. And he said, what do you want to do? And there was a paratrooper on the wall, like pulling a slip, like, you know, falling from the sky. And I said, that looks pretty cool. And I had a fear of heights, man. Like, why I did this, I have no clue. Like, I get on a ladder and I'm like yelling at my old lady, like, please hold it. Like, still to this day, after, you know, 30 jumps or so, like, I still have a fear of heights. So why I said that, I don't know, man. But he said, that's what I do. I'm an airborne infantryman. I was with the 82nd Airborne Division, and we started going through the process, and I was going there every day after work, you know, working through paperwork or whatever. I had a little bit of a criminal background from my childhood. You know, like stole some bikes and vandalized some cars. And I told you, like, you know, we used to like steal stereos from cars or systems or whatever and then sell them to the pawn shops just to make money. So I had to clear my name. And it came, you know, to the point where he asked me, when did I finish high school? Like, when did I graduate? Because I'm like 22 at this time, you know. And I said, I didn't finish high school. And immediately, like, record screeches, stops, everything stops right there. Because at this time in the Army, to join, you had to have a high school diploma. Like, you couldn't even join with a GED. So we sat there and, like, he said, well, let me see what I can do. And he calls me later on the next day and he's like, are you willing to go to night school? Because you only have a couple classes left and we can get you, like, the high school is called Choices in Clovis, New Mexico. And it was like where all the troublesome kids went. And it was a night school. And I said, yeah, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get this done. And he got everything set up. I had to go interview at the high school. I'm 22 years old, like going back to high school. So that was a little weird. But I started going. I passed all my classes. It took me about 4 or 5 months, and that's when I left for basic training. The day finally comes to leave for basic training. I get on an airplane. I think this is the first airplane I've ever been on. We fly from Amarillo, Texas is where I went to MEPS. We go from Amarillo, Texas to Atlanta, Georgia to Fort Benning, Georgia. We get to Fort Benning, Georgia, and immediately I start thinking I made the wrong decision here. Like, I regret what I did because I'm surrounded by like 17, 18-year-old kids. And that, you know, back home, I got a house, like I had a good job, I had a truck payment, like I had to pay insurance, like, you know, I'm a grown man, like trying to support myself. I wasn't making much money, but now I'm surrounded by all these kids who are crying about, you know, whatever, and these are the kids I'm supposed to go to war with and stuff, because this is infantry basic training. This isn't like Fort Jackson or whatever, like this is infantry basic training. And then the drill sergeants show up, you know, after a few weeks in reception or whatever, and that's when it started kind of falling into place for me, where, you know, they're calling off everybody's name, and throughout my childhood, anytime it was like alphabetical roster, anytime they get closer and closer to my name, like, I'm like, oh, they're gonna screw it up, you know, they're not gonna say it right, and it's okay, right? But it always kind of put this weird awkwardness in the situation, and my drill sergeants get to my name, you know, they're like, Smith, you know, whatever, and they're like, Zuzu, you know who the fuck you are, get up here, and I just, you know, Roger drill sergeant, moving drill sergeant, and I move, and where I fell into formation was a squad leader spot. And I didn't, like, that's how it was alphabetically. And I didn't know what a squad leader was at this time or nothing, but we start the whole basic training game, and, you know, just naturally, I just started going through my squad, like checking camelbacks, checking ID cards, because I was like tired of getting screwed up. Like the drill sergeants were coming over and scuffing us up for the smallest of things, because somebody forgot their dog tags in their locker or something. So naturally, I just started like squaring my squad away, because we started learning what squads are and team size elements and stuff. I actually stayed in that position the entire time we were in basic training. Like I was never like in charge of the platoon, but when student leadership came around, everybody voted for me because I'm like already doing it, right? So basic training was kind of a breeze, man. Like, do what you're told, be where you're supposed to be, and do it right the first time. If you can do those three things in the Army, at least in the infantry, like you're gonna go far. You can make sergeant major, you follow those rules. So I graduated basic training. One of my drill sergeants was actually from the 173rd, Drill Sergeant Hamilton. He had a huge impact on me and my career and kind of how I carried myself as a leader later on. We had 3 drill sergeants total, and Drill Sergeant Hamilton was our senior drill sergeant. And he was the only airborne infantryman out of the 3. The other 2, what in the airborne community we call legs, like they're leg infantry. And I know it's just the airborne community, and there's still like rangers and SOF and stuff like that. But when it comes to the regular infantry, paratroopers, like we hold ourselves to a higher standard, and we PT harder. We are in better shape. Like, there's an unwritten rule in the 82nd Airborne and the 173rd that you can't have a mustache, even though 670-1, what regulates us, allows it, but it's like these isms. And I noticed that with him right away in basic training. I ran with like the group that's fast. The groups were broken up, and I always wanted to challenge myself and run with the fast kids, even though I'm not a strong runner. Even to when I was in the best shape, I was never a strong runner, but we finished a run, and my other 2 drill sergeants were way behind us, like miles behind us. And he told our little group, and he said, this is the difference between being airborne infantry and just regular infantry. And he kind of like shit on the other drill sergeants. And I was like, all right, like I made the right choice. Like, I want to be like this guy. Graduate basic training. My brother came down. I think for the first time in my whole life, like he said, I'm proud of you. Like, because we had that falling out where I went to live with my mom because she was so sick, instead of going back to Wisconsin and finishing my senior year and actually graduating and stuff. Like, he recognized at that point that I went back to high school, got my diploma, like did this Army thing for the last 4 months and actually followed through with it. And in my life, it was the first time I really followed through with anything. And it was kind of crazy, but he said, like, I'm proud of you. And I gave him one of my name tapes because he was like, oh, I'm gonna wear this everywhere. Like, let me have it. Because we have a pretty unique last name, you know. Go to airborne school. Airborne school was a breeze. It was kind of dumb, actually. Every time your left foot hits the ground, you got to say airborne. Just start counting how many times your left foot hits the ground during the day. So you say airborne a lot, and you run everywhere, and you got to do pull-ups before you go into the chow hall, and it's dumb. You're just learning how to jump out of an airplane. We get to jump week, so it's broke down. It's ground week, tower week, where you're like jumping out of the towers and stuff, the 34-foot tower, and then I actually had the opportunity to jump out of the big tower at Benning. They like attach your parachute to this thing and it pulls you up, and then it kind of shows you how you're gonna fall. Not everybody gets to do it, but I actually got to do it. And then you have jump week, which is your 3rd week, and at the end of jump week, you graduate. Jump week, you're waking up at 1 in the morning to run to the like green ramp where you put on your parachute and like meet your aircraft and stuff. And it's like a 2-mile run, maybe a little bit more, but you're in boots and helmet and full like BDU top and bottom, and you run all the way there. It's a slow pace, but you make it there, and it's 1:30 in the morning, so you're super tired. And you get there, and you know, you have received all this instruction up to this point, but now you're gonna put on a parachute and you're gonna actually jump out of an airplane. And I remember when the plane pulled up, like you're not allowed to talk. You gotta sit there, and if you fall asleep, you get kicked out. If you talk, you get kicked out. At least this is how it was back then. And they play this one stupid video over and over and over and over again, and it's the recruitment video for the Airborne in World War II. So it's like, hi, welcome to the Airborne. Like, and it's this 10-minute long video, and you're sitting there for 8 hours, and they just play it over. They do it on purpose. I hope they still do it to this day, because it's a really good memory. But I remember the plane pulled up, and I'm like, oh, damn. Like, this is getting real. And you can smell like the jet fuel and stuff, and you get up, and you walk into the plane, and you walk in from the back, and you line up, and plane takes off. This is the 2nd time I've been on a plane in my life, and I'm about to frickin' jump out of this thing. And you go through all your procedures, stand up, hook up, check equipment, and the jump masters are screaming at you. And on the command stand up, I remember standing up, and my legs, like I hooked up, and my legs were shaking so bad, I couldn't stand all the way up. Like, they were wobbling. And the jump master comes up to me to do his final checks, and he's like, what the hell's wrong with you, Private? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can't stand up. And he was like, you better get the F over it. So eventually they stop shaking. We get the green light, we're going. I hand my static line off. I hit that door, I jump out. It just sucks you out of the airplane, and then it's chaos, and you're like counting, and then finally it opens, and like it's just the most peaceful sound in the world. You just hear like this airplane in the background, just like you hear it, and then you're falling, and then you got to hit the ground. And back then we were using the T10 parachutes, the circle ones, not the square ones. And I think you're falling at like 22 feet per second. I was always a bigger guy. I'm 180 pounds. Like, I'm hitting that ground when I hit that ground. None was broken, everything was fine. Did it 4 more times, man. 4 daytime, 1 nighttime. Graduation day, pinned my airborne wings, and that was airborne school, man. I got orders to the 173rd. By the grace of God, I don't know how, I didn't request it, but my drill sergeant Hamilton, he was in the 173rd, talked really highly about it, and graduation day of airborne school, the airborne instructor came up to me and he was like, I've been in the airborne community for 15 years and I still haven't got a chance to go to Italy, so here you go, Private. Yeah, like he was saying, like, how lucky I was, So went on leave for a couple weeks, went back home. I put my maroon beret on, had a 173rd patch on, and I actually went to that cowboy that told me, like, hey, if you're gonna do this in real life or shut the fuck up. And I like went back to the feedlot, and I drove up there in my shitty ass truck and parked and like got out in my uniform with my maroon beret and my patch. And I walked into the cowboy shack, which is where all the cowboys hang out. And I specifically went at a certain time that I knew everybody was gonna be there. And I walked in and I was like, look, I did it. And everybody was like, so what? Like, get out of here. So just put my tail between my legs, hung my head, and I was like, whatever, like, I'm better than them. Got on an airplane, man, took off to Italy, to Vicenza, Italy. Landed in Venice, so Caserma Ederle, which is the base the 173rd is stationed at. I think it's 2 now, Del Din and Caserma, but at that time it was 1. It's like 50 miles west of Venice, so like the famous Venice, Italy. We roll up to the 173rd on this like coach bus. It drops us off. We got our bags, we got our, all our equipment, and immediately we're walking through the gauntlet. Like, these boys just got back from Afghanistan. It's July 4th weekend. It's a four-day weekend. They're drinking. It's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and this bus parks right in the middle of the base. And, 2 or 3 cherries, cherry privates get off the bus, and all we're hearing is like, "Cherry fucks!" Like, they're yelling at us. Like, it was scary, man. I was scared. Like, I'm a grown ass man. I'm 23 years old at this time. Like, I'm scared as hell to what I'm walking into. And they go through like this draft process, and they're like, "What's your PT score? What's your run time?" And all these NCOs are just grilling us. We're doing push-ups. We're running around the buildings. Like, dudes are throwing beer cans at us as we're running by, during the draft is what I call it. One of my squad leaders, he was like, "All right, you're with me. Let's go take you to your barracks or whatever." And he showed me around base. I told him I was 23 years old. He said, "Hey, there's usually a rule of no drinking for the first 30 days, but you're not 18, you're 23. So if you want to go get a beer from the PX or whatever, you can." And he was super nice. And I didn't understand, like, I knew it was a game. I knew this was a game. I was wise enough to understand he was toying with me. So I go get some beer, walk back in. There's a bunch of people hanging outside my barracks. And they said, "Hey, Cherry, you're not supposed to drink." And I said, "Well, my squad leader," and before I even got that out of my mouth, he said, "Thanks." And he took my little 6-pack of beer, turned around, ignored me, like, just walks up to his group of people and like starts passing out beers. So I just opened my barracks room, sat on my hands for the next 3 days, while didn't know anybody. Then my first day, I wake up at like 4 in the morning. I'm nervous, man. I'm nervous to meet, my platoon. So I get to the company at 5:30 in the morning. PT starts at like 6:30 or something like that. I got there super early. I was the first one. And my squad leader pulls up, another squad leader, but who eventually became my squad leader. And he parks his car and he gets out, and I like jump up, go to parade rest. And he's like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I'm like, "I'm private." And he goes, "I don't fucking care." And just kept walking right past me into the company. And I meet, everybody else starts showing up. Nobody's talking to me. Like, I feel really awkward. Like, I just want to talk to people. Nobody is even paying attention to who I am, And my platoon sergeant calls me into the office. We do all our paperwork. Like, I went to parade rest for him, and he's like, "We don't do that here, Another mind game, I thought. So I fill out a bunch of paperwork, walk outside the office, and as soon as I come out, like, the whole platoon's gone, and they jump on top of me because they're like standing on tables right outside the door. And they pin me to the ground. The hand sanitizer comes out. They're pink bellying me. They're saying like blood in, blood out. I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, they're beating the hell out of me, man. And everybody just gets up after 30 seconds to a minute of getting slapped in the belly by 25 people. It's purple, I'm bleeding. They just get up and start ignoring me again. And I'm like, what is going on, dude? We go on a run. My squad leader, the one that said, "I don't fucking care who you are," he's like, "What's your run time?" And I said, "It's this." I was pretty quick, He's like, "All right, you're with me." And we run, Caserma, Italy is like a really small base, so we run downtown Vicenza, Italy, and they break me the fuck off, dude. I mean, I'm miles behind them. He turns around, runs all the way back to me, and he said, "If you ever fall out of another run, like, I'll kill you." Basically is what he tells me, and I'm like, "Roger, sorry," like, never, like, make it back to the base. For a really long time, I didn't fall out of a run anytime we went. We were gonna deploy about 8 months later after I got there, so we had to go do a bunch of train up and stuff. But the one thing that I noticed once I kind of got accepted by the group is the level of competence, discipline, character of our NCOs, of our sergeants in the 173rd. Like, it was a whole nother level of leader. Up to that point, the only person that demonstrated that was my drill sergeant, and that was Drill Sergeant Hamilton. If you were under like a sergeant or a corporal, like, he has your back no matter what. No matter what you do, like, he's got your back at this time in the 173rd. I think it's still like that now from my friends that are still in. Like, the NCOs are still like they're still held to such a high standard at the 173rd, and that's what makes the unit so great. I like to snowboard. Like I said, my brother and my nephew, who I considered my little brother, like, we did it together, and it's something that we enjoyed doing. I'm in northern Italy. I want to go snowboard in Austria. One of my squad leaders was also into snowboarding. Like he enjoyed it. So we planned this trip right before we were going to go on this training mission. And my platoon sergeant at this time was kind of a piece of shit. And he said, no, you guys can't go. You're going to sign this counseling form saying that you can't go because you're going to get hurt. And then you're not going to be able to go on this training mission. And both him and I were very experienced snowboarders. So we were like, whatever, we'll sign your paper. And I tend my whole life to hang out with older people. But in the Army, the older people were my age. Like the younger people my rank were 18, 19. And the sergeants and the staff sergeants were like 23, 24. So I could hang out with my leadership on Friday night, and I had the competence to on Monday morning, like Roger Sergeant, parade rest. Friday night, we're drinking beer, we're partying, we're snowboarding, whatever. And on Monday morning, I knew how to I know it's fraternization and stuff, but I knew how to play that game. So we signed the counseling form about going snowboarding. We're like, Roger Sergeant, we're not gonna go. And we went anyway. And we went to Austria for the day, snowboarded all day. Came back as soon as we parked in the barracks. Guess who's waiting there for us? Our platoon sergeant. And he looks at us both and he said, hey, 5:30 tomorrow in my office. My squad leader immediately was like, hey man, like I got this. Don't worry about it. So 5:30 in the morning, he walks in and I mean, they're cussing at each other. Like shit's getting thrown against the wall. Like it's getting bad in there. And I'm sitting outside the office like, damn, like this is kind of my fault. And they come barreling out of the office and they're cussing at each other, and it's getting crazy. Like they're about to fight. This is an E5 sergeant and an E7 sergeant first class. Like this does not happen. This is not supposed to happen in the Army. My platoon sergeant looks at me. He's like, "I'm gonna give you an Article 15. I'm gonna take your rank away. I'm gonna do all this stuff." And my squad leader's like, "You ain't gonna do shit. Like you're gonna have to fire me." Well, he fired him, and it became this big thing. He went to work for like headquarters, like we're fixing to deploy in a couple months. Now we're down a squad leader. I ended up not getting into any trouble about this, but he literally threw his career away for me. Like that's the level of NCO you have at the 173rd. Like these dudes will go to bat for you. Like he didn't deploy with us. I've never asked him about this, but he got out of the Army when we were deployed. So it could have been because of this. I think he lost rank. Like it was a big deal, man. And seeing that in the leadership made me kind of like it made me really motivated to be an NCO in the 173rd. So the month before deployment, I get a phone call. You know, I got 20, 30 missed calls when I wake up in the morning. It's my brother. Like I call him and he tells me my mom dies. I knew this day was gonna come, I just didn't know when it was gonna be. Immediately, this kind of adds to how awesome the NCOs are in the 173rd, except for that one. 5 hours later, I was on a plane in Venice, like heading back to the States to go to my mom's funeral and bury her and stuff. Spent a couple weeks over there after we took care of that. Came back, told my whole family, like, hey, I'm about to deploy. Like, I love you guys, just in case something happens. I get back to Italy, and that prick E7 platoon sergeant, he calls me in his office and he's like, hey, you gotta sign this form. You're not deploying with us. You got too much going on. Because like I said, I was kind of a troublemaker, but I got away with everything. But if we were training or deployed, like I was a really good soldier. But if we had nothing to do, like I tend to like wander and stray and get in trouble. So he kicks me out of the platoon and it broke my heart, man. Like these are my boys. Like we've been training together for 8 months. Like all I want to do is go to war with them. Everybody in the platoon like went to bat for me, and this platoon sergeant's like, nope, I don't give a shit. Nope, he's not going. Like he kept using this term, like he's too damaged with his mother's passing. Like, no, this is gonna damage me, dude. My mom had cancer for 10 plus years. Like I knew she was gonna die. Yes, it hurt, you know, but now it's time to go to war and I want to go with my guys. He kicked me out. Immediately, another platoon sergeant. I'm gonna give him a shout out. His name is Sergeant First Class Bradshaw at this time. He's sniper instructor, jacked black dude, Ranger tabbed, very serious individual from the Bronx, very, very serious, completely 180 from the platoon sergeant that I had in that platoon, who's like overweight, would fall out of runs and stuff. Sergeant Bradshaw, now Command Sergeant Major Bradshaw in Alaska. I think he's a brigade sergeant major now. He sits me down in his office and he's like, hey, you're gonna do what you're told. You're gonna shut up and you're gonna do it right. He just set these ground rules and I just agreed to him. I was just like, yeah, Roger Sergeant, like I just want to deploy. So for the next few weeks, you know, I'm trying to learn what they do because it's completely different from what we do. And I did what I could and we end up deploying from Italy to Afghanistan. We land in Afghanistan and I'm still the new guy in this platoon. Like I have zero camaraderie with anybody in this platoon. And Sergeant Bradshaw did take a chance on me. And we're at Fob Shank in Afghanistan. The airplane opens. It smells like shit. That's my first impression of Afghanistan. I mean, this place stinks. It's hot. It's June 2012. We walk into the reception barracks and my section leader comes up to me and he's just grilling me about the 240. The 240 is a machine gun and he's like, hey, what's the max effective range? Give me cyclic rates of fire. How much does it weigh? How long is it? Like, what'd you score in gunnery when we went? And, you know, I'm pretty knowledgeable when it comes to the weapon systems in our company. And I tell him and he's like, all right, you're now the 240 gunner. That's gonna be your job. I got my job for deployment in Afghanistan. Up to that point, I didn't have a job. So I grabbed this 240 and, you know, I make my way to the smoke pit, which is outside the transition barracks. And the guys we're ripping with from 1st Armored Division are there. And they're like, hey man, where are you going? And I said, we're going to Cop Kurwar tonight at like 2 in the morning. And he goes, that's where I was, bro. You want to put a G grip on the side of your 240. And like a grip, a hand grip, call them G grips in the Army. And I'm like, what? Like, why would you ever do, like, that's dumb. What am I gonna hip fire it? And he was like, yeah, you are. And you want to be able to hip fire as fast as possible so they get down and you guys can get behind cover. And it was at that moment where I was like, oh, it's gonna be like that. Like this is it's like that at Kurwar. And he was like, yeah, man, you're gonna get shot at as soon as you get there, like day one. I walked back inside, I told my section leader, like, hey, they want me to put a G grip because this and that. And he's like, yeah, that's actually a really good idea. My platoon sergeant, big guy from the Bronx, my section leader, and my lieutenant when we deployed were all Iraq vets, but they had never been to Afghanistan. And we all knew that, the whole platoon knew that, but we didn't talk about it ever, you know, but we knew they had never been in Afghanistan and we're going to like a pretty hot area of Afghanistan. But he said, yeah, just put a G grip on it. And Chinook comes later on that night, we load up the Chinook, we start flying to the COP. It's super early in the morning. I remember all our bags in the middle of the Chinook and we're taking off and we're flying for like 10, 15, 20 minutes and I just see the crew chief, we're under nods, and I just see the crew chief running back and forth, shooting, like he's shooting. And in my head, I didn't make the connection that he's shooting at people. Like I'm thinking that he's just shooting to shoot, like he's doing test fires or whatever. And we were so high up in elevation because we had to go, like the COP was at 9,500 feet and we had to go around the mountains to get to the COP. And when you go really high in elevation, your brain starts playing tricks with what it sees and what you're thinking because the air's super thin. So I got like vertigo. I thought the bird flipped upside down. Like I couldn't make the connection that he's shooting at people who are shooting at us. And we smacked that fucking LZ at Cop Kurwar and we're getting rushed off. And it just, I was so confused in the whole situation. We all were, we've talked about this. And we got to the COP or whatever, they rush us off. We grab our bags, we go inside. As soon as we get inside, this is a schoolhouse that was taken from the Taliban and turned into a COP. As soon as we get inside, there's 2 civilians, just random civilians in DCUs. And they just start handing us ammo. Boom, boom. And I'm a 240 gunner, I'm holding the 240 and she just starts laying 100 round belts on my shoulder. And her and I are still friends to this day on Facebook, but what the hell are civilians doing in Iraq or in Afghanistan? Like they're contractors, they're our ammo people, they count our ammo. So I get like 800 on my shoulder, my AG, my assistant gunner gets like 1,400, like everybody's getting grenades, like we're at war, like, and it still hasn't clicked yet. 3rd platoon comes in from doing a night patrol. Their uniforms are white from the sodium coming out of their uniform and being so high at elevation, it just turns their uniforms white. Like they've been there for 2 days. They've gotten into 3 gunfights. We've been up for 18 hours at this point. So our leadership comes over and just tells us, they say, hey, like, Y'all go get a couple hours of sleep. When you wake up, you're gonna get your area operation, or AO brief, area of operation. So we're like, Roger, sir, sergeant. We go upstairs, we get our hooches, we go to sleep for like 2 hours, wake up. Grab my 240, walk downstairs. We start getting our brief of the area in this smoke pit. The smoke pit was like surrounded by HESCO barriers, and it was down, and it was like 2 or 3 picnic tables, and it was completely surrounded with a metal roof. And it was named after a specialist that was killed. He was shot in the chest by a sergeant with a law. So a law is like a disposable rocket launcher, and his sergeant was showing him how to use it, and he shot him in the chest and killed him. Just this last deployment. So they like named the smoke pit after him or whatever. It said in loving memory of whatever, specialist, whatever. We learned that later, but we walk into the smoke pit. Our leadership's like, hey, this is that way, this is that way, this is the map. And I'm standing on a picnic table watching my platoon sergeant PL, and the MI guys briefed this. And the roof and the HESCO barriers, there was a gap. And I was thinking to myself, like, I wonder if the Taliban can see me. Like, I was such a cherry, dude. But I'm like, I wonder if they can see me. And behind me, like 100 yards, there was 2 Afghan National Army guys playing volleyball, passing it back and forth. So it was like thump, thump, thump. So I'm watching this brief. I hear that going on. I'm wondering if the Taliban can see me. And I hear thump, 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 3 thumps. And my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Bradshaw's briefing, and he just stops and he looks at the PL, and both their eyes got super wide. And they're like, RPG! And boom, 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 fucking 3 RPGs slam the schoolhouse. Dude, we're slick. Like, we don't have nothing on. Like, it's like that here. So we run inside to the schoolhouse, like, the schoolhouse getting peppered. There was a front door. They would pepper that front door anytime we'd start getting a hit. It was a big steel door. And like tracer rounds are slamming the door as we're walking into, or running into the schoolhouse to go kit up. And we run upstairs and we start kitting up, and this is one of my favorite sounds in the world, is the plate carriers clicking. When you're getting hit, like you can just hear click, 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 and it's going on everywhere. Nobody's saying shit except NCOs are yelling what we're about to do. We kit up, we run downstairs, we like gaggle real quick. The 1st Armored Division guys are still there, like a few of them. So my platoon sergeant is going down the line, and he's like, you're going, you're going, you're going. They get to me, and he's like, you're going. And I'm like, Sergeant, I only have a 100-round starter belt. And he was like, what the fuck, bro? Are you serious? Like, all right, you ain't going then. And he skips me, and he, 1st Armored Division 240 gunner. He's like, you're going. And the look on this dude's face was like, bro, like, I'm going home today. Like, I don't want to die. And my platoon sergeant's like, too bad, like, you're going. They go out there, they roll these dudes up, flank them, like target destroyed, like did what we came there to do, and they come back like a couple hours later. And the whole time they're gone, like I feel like a piece of shit. Cause like instead of packing all my ammo up into bandoliers, like into pouches for my kit, and like packing my AG bag and stuff, like I went to sleep because they told us to go to sleep. They come back like fucking fired up, man. Like, you know, they executed what they were supposed to do, man. Like took care of these motherfuckers, and everybody's fired up, their first gunfight, you know? And we're upstairs, we're cleaning weapons. We continued our area of operation brief in like a center room, like a briefing room that the cop had that we probably should have been at in the first place, but whatever. And then we go upstairs and we start cleaning weapons or whatever, and I'm sitting there and I'm like, bro, I can't wait to get my CIB, right? A CIB is a combat infantry badge that in the infantry you wear, and it shows other people that you've been shot at and you engaged. And like everybody around me, except for me and a couple other people in this platoon, like we didn't get to go, but they all got theirs that day, you know, where they didn't, we all got them on the same day, but technically they got them that day. And I'm talking like, man, oh, I can't wait to get shot at, you know, like I can't wait to do it. And my section leader, fiery Mexican dude, staff sergeant that was in the invasion of Iraq, you were there, you know how wild that was. Like just kicks in the door and he's like, hey, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. I wanna go the rest of this deployment without getting into another gunfight. He's like, I'm trying to get back to my kids. I got a wife to get back to. Like, I don't ever wanna hear those words coming out of your mouth. I don't ever wanna be in a gunfight again. And I was like, damn, all right, like it's like that. Like I get it. I understand now as an older, wiser man, like why he's saying that. You know, he was just trying to protect us. We get into this routine of guard duty. We had towers and gun trucks around the cop, patrols where we'd patrol out, and then quick reaction force. And the first time I ever engaged in a gunfight was probably like a couple days later, probably like a day or two later, and I'm on tower guard. It's me and another friend, a platoon mate, and we had two 240s, one facing one way, one facing the other way. We were facing this village. The name of this village was Yargle, and it was surrounded by like big tall pine trees. And on the other side of those pine trees was like a calotte wall, and that's where like the city was. It was on the other side of that wall. And I'm facing the opposite way of him, and he's looking, and I hear that sound, thump, thump, thump. Like, I know this sound now. Like, I remember it from the other day. I see the trees like do this from the concussion of the RPG. Like, they just separate, and I see like these two RPGs like coming right at us is what it felt like. And it was like Angry Birds. Remember that phone on the game? That's what it looked like. Like they're doing like this, and they were just black. So I holler, I said, RPG, we ducked down behind the sandbags, like they exploded right underneath us. And then they opened up with machine gun fire. I told him to call it up on the radio, like where these guys were, because we just seen them. And I said, and then start shooting. So he's like loading the 240, and bro, I'm never gonna say this dude's name because he's one of my best friends. But as he's loading the 240, he loads it upside down and half cocks it. At the same time, we're getting rocked behind us, and I see a Taliban dude in like a brown turban, like run up on this TRP, like a target reference point, and like start shooting at us with a machine gun. So I'm like, what do I do here? So I'm like, damn it. And I unfuck his 240, and I clear it, and I load it, charge it, and I'm like, fucking shoot, 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 shoot. And I go to the other side, and I'm like, I just go cyclic on this 240 for 200 rounds. Like, my barrel is red, dude. But no other, like, that dude's not there anymore. It's a giant dust cloud. So I go back to the other side, and I get on that 240, and I start shooting. I don't really see anybody, but I know where these dudes were when they fired the RPGs because of the trees separating. So he started shooting his M4 as I'm shooting this 240, and he shot his M4 like right next to me, man. And in gunfights, you can't be like, hey, stop, let me put my ear pro in. Like, you're just shooting, and he's just shooting, and it was so fucking loud, I thought I got shot. Like, I'm in the middle of a burst with my 240, and he fires like 3 or 4 rounds out of that 5.56, and it like shocked me because it was so piercing that I thought I got shot. Anyway, firefight dies down. We call up what we did, and you know, we get to talking, and I'm like, man, do you think, like, I seen that dude back there, like, do you think I killed him or whatever? And he's like, oh, I don't know, maybe you were seeing stuff. And a tractor backs up to that TRP and loads the body and drives away. So that was like officially like first time I did my job, I guess, as you'd say. We continue this kind of routine tower guard, patrols, QRF for the next like month or so. And the whole time we're doing this, like we keep getting busted. There's an A&A compound in Afghan National Army compound attached to our COP. And anytime we push out, no matter the time, like we keep getting busted on these missions and end up taking shots and from distance, you know, but like these dudes know where we're at for some reason. And we're like using the WADI and the IV lines to get to these towns and stuff so we can get eyes on objectives, and every single time we get caught. Every platoon does. So one morning we're like, all right, we're gonna leave at 2 a.m. We're not gonna tell the A&A, and we're gonna go do this patrol or whatever to this town and come back like before they even wake up. We go out, we do this mission. Magically, we're not getting shot at, like we're not getting any intelligence that we're about to get attacked or nothing. Like we go do the mission, which was just like a presence patrol. We turn around, we start walking back. The way we did things is we bounded Overwatch back to the COP. Gun team, long guns here, regular infantry guys here. They move forward, we're pulling security on them. They get to where they need to go, they pull security on us. We go past them to the next terrain feature, so on and so forth. We're doing this the entire way back to the COP. And up to this point, that's what the enemy was doing to us, but behind us. We would bound Overwatch, and they would take what we just bounded from, they'd shoot at us from the back. And this is a long distance, right? This is like a click, 800 meters to a click of bounding overwatch each movement. And we get to the rest of the platoon headquarters, which is like, you know, platoon sergeant, the medic, the mortars. We had a JTAC with us. Shout out Wags, he was badass. And we get to the bottom of the hill. I could see the cop. We're like 250, 300 meters away from the cop. And the gun line just erupts. Like they just start shooting. So we run back to the rest of the platoon and put in our tripod with the 240. My AG links up the rounds and I'm like, where they at? Where they at? Where they at? Because I'm the biggest weapon on the ground, right? Like the most important thing for me is to get that weapon going as fast as possible. And everybody's like, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. And we're like, what do you mean ceasefire? Like, where are they at? And you just see 500 meters away, like this tall Afghani guy like hold up a child, dude, like a kid. And we were like, what the hell just happened? Well, the sun was in our eyes when we were bound in Overwatch, and somebody, I mean, to this day, it's not known who did this, but somebody had an itchy trigger finger and started this whole thing. So in gunfights, the way it works sometimes is whoever fires first, everybody follows. So to this day, we still don't know who did it, but this kid ended up getting shot in the knee, and the kid was kind of handicapped, I guess, so he seen us out there. He like overtook the hill we were at, and he would like pop up and look at us, and then he'd get down and go somewhere else and then like pop up. Well, we thought he was running like ID wire or something, you know, like war's war, dude, war's hell, like shit's gonna happen. And you know, there is no excuse you can give for a mistake like that. And it's perfectly acceptable if there's war, shit like that's gonna happen. So this Afghan dude comes running up with this kid in his arms, and behind us, the ANA's like pushing up onto this hilltop where we're at, and my platoon sergeant and the ANA are going at it. And the ANA's like, dude, we're gonna kill you, we're gonna kill everybody. And my section leader comes up to me and he's like, hey, stay red, which means keep your weapon hot. Keep that bolt to the rear on an open bolt weapon and keep it off safe and your finger on the trigger. So I grab this G grip, and I'm holding my 240 and I'm planning on how to kill all these motherfuckers, dude. Like in my head, I've already done it. I'm probably gonna die while I do this, but like I'm fixing to do this if shit starts going south. Tensions de-escalate. We walk back into the cop, they walk back into their compound, and we go debrief in that intel room. And we kind of tell, like, now this relationship is about to be sour between the Afghan National Army and us on the same base. We got that kid a bird. Our medics worked on him. Like, he was fine. He walked again on that deployment. Like, we seen him walking again. Like, shit's gonna happen. But now tensions are really bad, and we already think the ANA is kind of corrupt. So now it's probably gonna get worse, and we all know that. So like, a week goes on and nothing. Absolutely nothing is happening. That whole rest of the week, we were doing patrols and nobody messed with us. Everywhere we went, people were just living their life, you know, hi, like giving you the nice, and you're like, all right, something's not right here. And I started getting this weird feeling. We're on QRF now, so first platoon was on patrols. QRF's kind of like your rest days, so it's quick reaction force, so unless they need you, you're kind of just chilling in the rear. You're not pulling guard, you're just chilling in the rear. And I remember popping up because I heard gunshots from my bunk, and my buddy's right next to me, and I'm like, hey, first platoon's getting shot at. And he was like, they're fine, you know, and I'm like, I'm gonna kid up just in case, you know, and he like goes back to sleep. He's super lazy. He's a good friend of mine. We were roommates together in Columbia, South Carolina. We were drill sergeants together. And he's like, they're fine. So I kid up and I go downstairs, I grab my 240, and sure enough, whenever we needed to do something, like whoever was QRF, they would shout Talladega, Talladega, Talladega over the loudspeaker. And we would wake up and kid up and then assemble. And sure enough, first platoon's in the tick. And I'm already kitted up, so I'm down there like, what do you need, sir? What do you need, sergeant? Like brown nosing. And they're both like, come with me. And we walk in. On the other side of our cop, we had this long bunker. So you'd walk up to what we called Artillery Hill, and we had artillery up there. 777s, and you'd walk downstairs into this dirt bunker, and every like 50 feet there was gun positions, and at the end it was like a super open area. And we're like rushing to get there because first platoon's in a tick and we need to see what we can do. And we get to the end of the bunker and my friend Ryan Deming loads his 203, slams it shut and shoots his 203 round into the ground in front of us. And it was one of those moments where you're like, ah, and he was like, fuck, 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 fuck. And he just tossed the grenade out the opening. And for those of you that don't know, it has to rotate a certain amount of times and like the bearings inside of it there's all kinds of science to it. It wasn't gonna explode, but like, you don't know that in the heat of the moment. So anyway, first platoon's in a tick. My lieutenant comes down. We do not talk about what just happened because it would have been a whole investigation. A-10s come on station. And my lieutenant's like, hey, we got A-10s on station. I'm like, oh, cool. And there's not much we can do in this gunfight because it's so far away, but we're just there to get the perimeter of the COP secured just in case they're trying to attack us from two ways. A couple minutes go by and I'm talking to my lieutenant and I was like, hey, sir, I thought there was A-10s, and in the middle of my sentence, just bah, 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 like the A-10s just light up this whole tree line, dude. We end up killing all these bad guys. And it was pretty cool. First time I ever seen something like that. So everybody gets back to the COP, we get debriefed, and then all the intelligence starts coming out the day before, July 27th, 2012. They're saying we're gonna get V-bitted, there's gonna be S-vests, suicide vests, there's gonna be, there's be on the lookout for bolos for like Toyota Hiluxes, Toyota Camrys to be V-bids, like, if you've ever been to Afghanistan, that's every vehicle ever in the entire country is either a Toyota Hilux or a Toyota Camry, and both of these bolos were on white vehicles of each. That's every vehicle. So everybody's kind of like high intensity. We end up going back on tower guard, I think the next day after all this happened or whatever, and me and my friend, the one, we were roommates together in South Carolina later on. Him and I are on guard in the morning, and we had a TRP in the middle of a town. It was called the Tree of Life. It was this huge petrified tree in the middle of the town, and a target reference point is something you can say over the radio real quick, and it draws your eyes to wherever that area is. So this one was called the Tree of Life. And it's 5:30 in the morning, like fixing to be daybreak, and 40 fucking dudes roll up to the Tree of Life. Like, they know we can see them. Like, they are there to let us know, like, hey, we are here. And they're all military age males, and all of them look like bad guys, like every single one of them. So we call it up, and we tell the sergeant of the guard what's going on and stuff, and he's like, just keep an eye on it, let us know. Our relief came, relieved us. We told our relief, like, hey, this is what's going on. They're like, okay. We go back to the hooch, we get a couple hours of sleep, we wake up, we go on guard again, but it's another position. And it's about noon at this point, and my medic is on guard with me. He's on the radio, I'm on the gun. And on this side of the COP, there's a bazaar like 500 meters away from us, like a half a click away from us. And the bazaar is filled at this time with military age males. There's not a kid in sight, there's not a female in sight, like there's just like 20 military age males just hanging out looking angry. And I'm looking through my binos, and I don't know if he's seen me or what, or how this happened, but I confirmed the story with my medic that this is what happened because this is how I remember it. I'm looking through my binos, and there's this guy in a brown turban with a real angry look on his face, and he's looking at me and he just does this. And I'm like, hey, doc, like this just happened, call this shit up. Like, so he calls it up, and the sergeant of the guard's like, all right, Roger, acknowledged. And we get off shift, man, and something is not right about what's happening right now. I could feel it, and Doc could feel it, and my other homie could feel it. And we go upstairs, and it's 110 degrees in Afghanistan at this point. Like, we're sweaty, it's the middle of the day. So I like strip down before I take a nap, and I'm like wiping myself off with baby wipes, like hitting all the spots that you're gonna hit. And my friend, the one I keep telling about that we were roommates later in life, he's on his computer on his laptop, and he's like, hey, check out this adult entertainment I just downloaded. It took like 4 days. And I'm like, get out of here, bro. Like, I'm showering. And as soon as I said like whatever smart ass comment I made to him, like an RPG hit like right behind him, and it hit so hard it like threw him off the wall. He's on the wall on his laptop, like talking shit about this porn. And it hit right behind him, and there was a protection layer outside our schoolhouse that like, it was this foam stuff that they put a couple deployments ago, and it would absorb those RPG rounds, but you would still feel the shock. And immediately after that happened, bro, like mortars started coming in. Like we're getting rocked, bro. We're getting rocked harder than we've been rocked this entire month and a half that we've been here, you know. And we kit up, you know, everybody's slapping their kit on. We run downstairs. Well, I don't have a fucking weapon, bro, because my weapon's in the tower. I'm a 240 gunner. I don't have a weapon. So we're hearing casualties. We're getting mortared and RPG'd. Like all this is happening so quick. Like everybody's moving everywhere. And then my friend walks in and he's bloody, dude. And he just kind of like falls over and he's like, hey, we got more wounded out there. And you know, my section leader gets to me and I'm like, so I don't have a weapon. My weapon's in the tower. And my medic's like, here, take mine. And he hands me his M4. I don't have, you know, magazine pouches. So I'm like, I need magazines. And I just put them in my side pouches. And I don't know if you've, you know, for your listeners, I know you have, but a full 30 round mag of Full Metal Jacket armor piercing is heavy as hell. Like they are heavy. So I put 5 in this pocket, 5 in this pocket. And now I got to sprint 200 meters across the cop, you know, going like HESCO to HESCO. And they're like smacking me in my side, man, just digging in every step I take. And I remember thinking like, damn, man, like I'm gonna leave bruises. And I did at the end of it, man, like my whole legs were bruised up and cut up. And we start, you know, going to the wall and taking positions and, you know, shooting back where we're supposed to. And dudes are lobbing 2 or 3 rounds. The machine guns are going off. The 50s going off. Like the Mark 19s, like staying cyclic and stuff. And people start getting low on ammunition. I got told to start running ammo. So those civilians have made their way to their like ammo connex. And they just started cracking all the ammo and handing it to us. And when I got to the ammo connex, you know, they're both crying, bro. Like they've been here at Kerwire for like a year, and it was up to this point, like they told us we had never seen an attack like this. You know, like the bad guys were like, they were trying to get into the gate. Like it was 40 or 50 of them that surrounded us, and they're just moving closer and closer and then lobbing mortars and hitting RPGs. And, you know, their plan was probably a dude with an S-vest to walk up through the gate, you know, and blow himself up or whatever. But I'm like grabbing ammo crates from these civilians and they're crying. So I run and I'm like, this is crazy. This is psychotic. So I'm running ammo and finally my sergeant puts me in this HESCO like firing position and he said, hey, we got dudes over here. Like I need you to engage them whenever you see them. Well, sure enough, they freaking popped out, man. So I'm like laying waste to these dudes trying to get them. The machine guns laying waste, like everybody's shooting. And this douchebag platoon sergeant that I told you about in the beginning of the story, he just shouts from a connex. He's like, hey, we got a KIA over here. Hey, man, like I know I'm young at this point in the Army, but I know you don't say that kind of stuff in the middle of a firefight. You ask for a litter and you get that body out of there and you don't say anything about anybody being dead because it takes your focus off the enemy that's in front of us right now trying to kill us, and it makes you wonder who that is. And that's what I did, man. Immediately I just started going through a Rolodex. Instead of pulling security, I'm trying to figure out like who this is. That platoon sergeant is the platoon sergeant of my old platoon. And when he said that, it just blew my mind, man. I'm like, why are you doing that? And I made my way over there and I just seen a left arm and a patch that first platoon had. They had like a little dog patch and I just seen that arm and then I got yelled at to go somewhere else. And I just started going through my head about who it is. We all started doing that. We've talked about this moment amongst us all and we all did it. You know, that platoon sergeant made a huge mistake by saying something stupid like that. And this is hour 2, hour 3 of the firefight. Like it's still very consistent. It's very sustained. I'm running more ammunition. I'm pulling security over here. And then the birds came in I had 3 wounded friends, I believe. And then 1 friend that was KIA, but we don't know who they are, you know. The bird comes in and immediately the gunfire erupts again. The Taliban hones in on the medevac dust off when it gets close, and that bird came in so fast and so hard that when it hit the LZ, it bounced like 10, 15 feet in the air. and they loaded our boys up and it got the hell out of there. But that kind of brought the firefight back up again, and guys just started appearing out of those little IV lines closer and closer. And I remember it was the first time on this deployment, like I was pretty scared, man. Like I was taking a knee behind a HESCO, and I looked up at one of my NCOs, who later on becomes one of my really good friends, and he had just this sense of calm. He was so calm, dude. And he's like, hey, Ski, I need you to go over here, and I need you to pull security like this, and I need you to provide suppressive fire, because we got a squad that's maneuvering out there right now, and they're gonna maneuver on these two guys over here. And I'm like, Roger, Sergeant. So he those thoughts of I'm about to die just are out of my head because of how calm he was in that situation. So I start, suppressive fire, I yell it, I start shooting. I'm at like 28, 29 rounds, and I just decide to stop. For some reason, I decide to stop shooting. And as soon as I stop shooting, a support generator mechanic runs right by me. If I would have shot those last 2 or 3 rounds, like I would have shot this dude in the head. And I grab him, I realize what's happening, put my weapon on safe. I grab him and throw him like against the HESCO barrier. And I'm like, hey, motherfucker, I almost just killed you. Like, what are you doing? Get out of here. And I kind of directed him to safety. He's just a support guy. I don't know what he was doing out there. I think a generator got hit by a mortar or something, and he was trying to fix it or something. Later on in life, I apologize for doing that to him, but in the heat of the moment, I could have killed him, and then I got to live with that for the rest of my life. And that's immediately where my mind went. But I get kicked out to a tower. It's like hour 4 or 5 now, maybe even 6. It's starting to get dark outside. The firefight's starting to lull. It's still happening, but it's starting to lull. And it's me and another buddy in the tower, and we're talking about like, hey, who's this, who's that, blah, blah, blah. And I wonder who's KIA. The firefight completely stops. We get the call over the radio to go weapons tight, no more. Weapons aren't free anymore, weapons are tight, you guys need to stop shooting. And bro, I'm not even telling you, the moment that we got that command and we officially called the firefight over, this military-age male on a bicycle just comes riding right outside our cop. The moment it happened. And I remember thinking like, this dude probably just shot at me. Like, I guarantee this dude probably just shot at me, and he's going back home or whatever. He stashed his weapons, he's going back. And I didn't shoot him, I didn't do anything. Our relief comes, we walk back inside the schoolhouse, we bound back to the schoolhouse, and we walk inside the schoolhouse, and there's my friend's gear with the blood all over it, his rucksack, his weapon, his nods, and it's my friend Theodore Glendy, and he was the one that was KIA that day. Apparently he was shooting his saw. This is really early in the firefight. He's shooting his saw, he took a knee, he went to load another drum of 5.56, and a mortar came in and hit the exact connex. They were all in. And he stood up and died instantly. There was a medic there. All these guys were my friends, obviously, but the medic was injured and 2 other people were seriously injured. And after they came to, my medic did what he was supposed to do and patched everybody up. He knew instantly that Glendy was killed, and this is coming from somebody that was in the connex. So he started working on everybody else to include himself. Rumor has it that he got put in for a Silver Star, but since he was like a PV2, like it got knocked down to an Archon with Valor, you can just imagine getting hit by a mortar in a tiny little connex and then having to wake up and then work on yourself and your buddies. That's pretty valorous, right? The next day, it was quiet night, man. So Glendy's best friend, him and I were roommates for a little bit. He walked over to my hooch and he was like, hey, you want to go smoke? Like later on, it's like 2, 3 in the morning now. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll go smoke with you. So we walked down to the smoke pit and we just smoked like a pack of cigarettes, man. We didn't say nothing. Like, I think I maybe tried to talk to him because I knew that Glendy was his best friend and he didn't give me nothing back. So we just sat there, smoked cigarettes. Next day comes around, we're on patrols, I think, nobody's going anywhere. We go to breakfast, walk back from breakfast, and as soon as we do, I just hear, boom, big explosion, right? Biggest explosion I've heard yet. I dive underneath the picnic tables at the smoke pit, like, I charge my 240, I'm like, what the hell's going on? And my first sergeant comes running out of the schoolhouse, and he's like, yeah, we fucking got him, we got him. And they had rallied the remaining forces they had and gotten more people just outside of our cop underneath a tree where they thought we couldn't see them. And we had like a Predator drone like looking for this group of people through military intelligence and just dropped the hellfire on them and killed them all, bro. Every single one of them. I watched that video 500 times, bro. They're like blowing up and like legs are stuck in trees. Like, I just remember pausing it, like I enjoyed their death, bro. Like, and it wasn't as good as getting Glendy back, but it like fueled that fire of a warrior inside me. And man, it's pretty routine after that. A couple weeks later, we got ordered to close the COP, you know, getting into gunfights periodically. This is the time of transition in Afghanistan that we were handing it over to the ANA. We kept hearing about this green on blue, like where the ANA were gonna attack us and stuff like that. Like military intelligence kept us up to date. So we're like weary of them. So when it came time to close the COP, we destroyed everything, like anything we could, all the bunk beds, everything that we had, we destroyed, and we put it in this giant burn pit, dude. This burn pit was like 100 feet by 100 feet, you know, like 30 feet deep. And we would just throw stuff in this burn pit and just burn it over the next, you know, few weeks to a month. And we were using this big tractor to knock down the interior HESCO barriers. And at the end, we even put the tractor inside the burn pit, dude. Like, we burned everything. And at this point, it's like lawless. Like, there are no rules on the COP, like relaxed grooming standards. We're walking around in t-shirts, like flipping the Taliban off when they drive by and take pop shots at us. Like, it's pretty crazy, man, now that I think about it. It even got to the point that the last day we were there, we're shooting at a 55-gallon drum of JP8 diesel with incendiary rounds from the Barrett 50 cal sniper rifle, like trying to get it blown up, right? Like, and our commander's like, "You're cool, man. Like, I don't give a shit." And we called everybody started leaving, and they, you know, a group of people were assigned to take the trucks back to Fob Shank, which was like a 24-hour drive. So our biggest weapon system was that Barrett 50 cal. We didn't have any 50 cal machine guns. Like 240 was our biggest machine gun. And as we're trying to blow this barrel up, man, these two Hodge, like Taliban dudes, like take pop shots from the road on this moped, and we like flip them off, and we're like, whatever, like bring it, you know, like it's pretty lawless. And they brought it, man. We got hit like 2 hours later with a full 360 attack, like a good hour, 2-hour firefight, man. But everybody was okay. We took care of them and eliminated the threat. But now we're low on 240, we're low on SAW, we're low on grenades, we're low on 203. All we have is a Dishka, which is like a Russian 50 cal on the roof of our schoolhouse, and like a few hundred rounds of 7.62. And we still got to defend this place till we blow up that bunker I was describing. And there's a picture, I'm gonna make sure I send it to you. And it's me smoking a cigarette as soon as that firefight was done, and my eyes are like super wide, and I'm right next to the commander. And the commander's on the radio, and he said, "Hey, I need a speedball." And a speedball is like a supply drop that they drop out of a helicopter. And he was like, "I need batteries, I need 5.56, I need 7.62, I need, you know, 203 grenades." And they end up sending the speedball, and like all the batteries are dead. And they give us the wrong ammo. They gave us like ANA ammo. Like for some reason, like everything kept going horribly wrong. And my commander got back on the radio, and cause we were like all hanging out outside. Like it was miserable inside because we had taken all the air conditioners and threw them in that giant burn pit. So we were all kind of just outside. And he says, if you don't get me what I need, like you're gonna need to send me more body bags because we're all gonna die. And I think battalion took us serious after that, because immediately like EOD came in and they started lining that big bunker with C4. And we put all our javelins, our SMAW Ds, AT4s, whatever we had left that was explosive, we put it inside this bunker. And we're like, I remember carrying javelins like in the box, like into this bunker. Like, so the work up to this explosion is pretty big, and this is like our final christening and fuck you to the Taliban that we're leaving. And the EOD guys gather us up in the mortar pit, and I just remember them saying like, fire in the hole, fire in the hole, fire in the hole, and I seen them pull that pin, and the explosion, like the choo, like was so big, it took all the oxygen out of the air, and it like literally took your breath away. So you can imagine how big. I think they used like 400 packs of C4, like 400 pounds of C4, plus all those javelins, plus all those AT4s. Like it took the oxygen out of the air and then sent the shock wave. And I remember it exploded and I couldn't breathe and everybody was kind of panicking for a second. And then the shock wave came through and we were like, whoa, that was pretty badass. Chinooks came, man, got us out of there in a couple hours after that. We ended up going to FOB Ultimer for the remainder of our deployment. FOB Ultimer and FOB Shank, we bounced between the two. And you know, it was pretty routine, man. We got trucks. We hadn't had trucks up to that point. Everything was dismounted, so we went back to, I was in a weapons company, so that's a mounted company anyway. We knew what we were doing. It's funny, after we got back to, or after we went to FOB Ultimer, like this place is like a green zone. Like I know Iraq had green zones, but Afghanistan isn't really known for them. But somehow, like we paid the Taliban off to like not attack this base. And it was chill, dude. There was coffee, like it was chill. There's an SF group that was attached to it. So we're like in the tower when, it's me and Doc again. Me and Doc always got in trouble. We're on guard and somebody is supposed to be awake and the other person is sleeping, one up, one down. And we both end up falling asleep and the door gets kicked in, boom. And it's the command sergeant major of the entire region of Afghanistan. And he goes, wake the fuck up. What unit are you with? Who's your first sergeant? Who's your platoon sergeant? We get off our guard shift or whatever, and we are walking so slow back to our hooch because we know, they already know. And we get in there, my platoon sergeant had left. The big guy from the Bronx, like he left and went to take another platoon in another company because their platoon sergeant got hurt. So that section leader, that fiery Mexican section leader that I had, he was now my platoon sergeant. This dude did not play around, man, ever. Ever. He's a very serious man. To this day, he's very serious. And he tells me and the medic, he said, for the next however long I want to, you're in full kit, no matter what you're doing. I don't give a shit if you're going to take a shower, you're in full kit. And I was doing stuff like sweeping the dirt and in the heat of Afghanistan, man, for the next 14 days. And during the day, our mission was to like guard these jingle trucks that would come in and like suck all of our poop out, or that was like our job, right? It was pretty lame. And one day I'm like full kit and I'm guarding this guy and it's day 14 or 15 of me in full kit doing these dumbass tasks. And a bunch of SEALs and SF guys like walk around the corner and they're like in polos with their khakis and their Glocks on their hips and they all got beards and they walk by me and they're like, join the Army, they said. It'll be fun, they said. And I have never felt more like a pogue my entire infantry career than that moment. So I'm wearing like my dick flap, my shoulder daps, elbow pads, like ear pro, like I am full kit for punishment, right? Like we didn't wear that when we went out, but. So anyway, I'm back in the tower and the radio comes, no, my now section leader comes and he's like, hey, Sergeant Sanchez needs to see you. You need to run there right now. And I'm like, all right, roger that. So I run all the way across the post. It was like a mile. I get there as fast as I can in full kit and I like knock on the door and he's like, meet me outside. And in my head, the way he said, meet me outside is we're about to fucking fight. I don't know what I did, but we're about to fight. Like he was about that life. And I go outside and he's like, you know, ever since you got to this platoon, you've been nothing but a nuisance and you get in trouble all the time. And this and that, and he goes, but you're pretty good in a firefight. And he rips off my rank and promotes me to corporal right then and there, dude. And I'm like confused. I'm like, what just happened? And he's like, get out of my face. So, Roger, Sergeant. So I was like, do I still have to wear it? And he goes, yeah, you're gonna wear that for longer. And I'm like, Roger. So I run back to the tower and I walk in and I look at my buddy Nukes and I'm like, dude, I just got promoted to corporal. Like, I'm an NCO. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I don't know, man. Like, I don't know why this just happened. Like, because in my eyes, I'm a piece of shit. I'm always getting in trouble, you know, but he seen something in me, man, that kind of lit this fire of leadership. And it continued all the way through my career. Well, we did those missions out of there for a little bit, and then we went to Shank, and now I'm a team leader and I got a couple guys underneath me. We just left FOB Baltimore, where I got in trouble and promoted at the same time. And now we're on FOB Shank, which is right down Route Utah, right down the road from where we just were. And, we start running these missions to where we get in the vehicles, we go out to these villages, we set up like outside patrol bases with trucks. We take like khalats, which is like where the Afghan people live. We find random abandoned khalats. We park the trucks in a big circle around it, and then we run missions from there for like 3 to 14 days at a time. Like that's kind of how our mission set was. And we were right outside this town in Afghanistan called Pul-e-Alam. Pul-e-Alam. And it's, 45 minutes up Route Utah towards Kabul. And it's a hot spot for insurgent activity and stuff. But once again, we're at the point of deployment where the Afghan National Army is in front of us and we are supporting them. So we go out on this mission. We pick up this JTAC on the way to this mission. And a JTAC's like a combat controller in the Air Force. They're the ones that talk to the birds in the sky. And we pick them, and they're usually pretty cool. Like we had an awesome one at the COP. His name was Staff Sergeant Wags. He was badass. And this dude gets in our truck when we pick him up, and he's like fat and overweight, and he is not. So immediately we're like, this mission's gonna suck. Like this dude is not gonna be able to keep up with us. So anyway, we get to Pul-e-Alam, we set up our patrol base. ANA goes out, they get into a big firefight. We go out there, support them. But they're handling it. We got birds in the sky. We had a heavy kill team, it was called, where it's an Apache and 2 Kiowa helicopters kind of circling underneath the Apache. And we take this one position, and I tell this JTAC, like, hey, load your magazine, because his magazine's not even loaded at this point, and we are in an active firefight. And he loads his magazine and slams his bolt forward. And when he slams his bolt forward, his magazine falls out. And it was like, dude, who are you? Like, just talk to the birds, do your job. The ANA end up like doing what they're supposed to be doing. The birds are doing gun runs and stuff, and they're suppressing the enemy. So there's no point for us to keep moving forward. So we kind of bound back to the trucks, to the patrol base. And as we're walking up to the patrol base, like, my commander's at the back of the truck, and he just points, and he's like, oh, fuck, like slow motion. And I turn around in enough time to just see the Kiowa helicopter do 1, do 2, and go beneath the tree line, and then you just see the dust. And it was probably about 5 miles away from us. The way we had to go was through like Taliban alley. Like it's like heavy insurgent presence down this area that this helicopter just went down in. And it was like Black Hawk Down, man. As soon as it went down, like it was a 5-second lull, and then everybody just did what they were supposed to do. And I was a gunner in the trucks. So I run to my truck, and I was the platoon sergeant's gunner. So it was like the medic, and then the platoon sergeant, and a driver, and me, and maybe like one other person in the truck. We get in the truck, I'm not even buckled in. Like, you're supposed to have a gunner's harness and stuff when you're in the gunner's seat. Like, I'm not buckled in because that takes too long to put that harness on. Like, we're going 50, 60 miles an hour down this alley. Like, I am bouncing out of the gunner's hatch. Like, it's scary, man. Like, the bird just went down. We need to get there before the Taliban gets there and these pilots end up on Al Jazeera or something. That's the only thing in my head that I'm thinking, that these pilots are going to get taken hostage if they're alive. Somehow we get there without getting into any kind of skirmish or hitting any kind of IED, because I think even the Taliban was surprised they shot down a bird. But we park behind this series of khalats in Pul-e-Alam, and the bird is down on the other side of this khalat. And like I said, I'm the gunner, so I'm in the truck. I have a section of security that I'm pulling. All the dismounts jump out of the truck and they run to the helicopter. I'm talking to my TC, who's also my AG. I'm like, I wonder if they're alive or not. Like but at the same time, we're getting intelligence over the radio saying, hey, the Taliban's setting up on you. They're about to mortar your location. You need to move this truck over here. You need to do this. Like, we're getting a lot of intel on these walkie-talkies. I think it's called LLVI. Don't ask me the acronym, but it's a walkie-talkie that picks up the Taliban's messages back and forth, and we had a terp with us. And they're saying we're about to get rocked. Like they're super stoked. They shot down a helicopter and stuff. And you could see all around this area the bodies of where the helicopters were killing people. And I remember seeing one under binos, like I looked at him and it's like, he was petrified. His face looked like glass and his teeth were like super white and they had popped like popcorn, because that's a thing. I guess when you burn or get hit by a rocket, that's what happens. And it was a super tense scenario because right across from me was this giant field, and it was just this couple of military age males that were like raking their field, their ag field. And I'm like, you know, a helicopter just crashed here. Like something's not right about this. There's a little kid that kept going to the village back and forth to these people, and they're planning to do something. The dismounts immediately come back. They asked for litters. That's what it was. And we had like a medical MRAP. Like there was places for the litters to go because the medic rode with us. And I got out of my driver got the litters out of the truck and put them on the back, and they said, we need 2 litters and some medical equipment or something. So in my head, I'm thinking like, all right, good. Like the pilots are alive. Like somehow they survived this crash. Later on, I find out from my medic, Doc Thibodeau, that when they finally got to the helicopter, Doc went to the male pilot first. His name was Montenegro, Chief Montenegro. And he ripped the door off the Kiowa and he told me it's like fiberglass. And he checked the pulse of Montenegro and there was still a pulse there. It was slight, but it was a pulse. So they ripped him out and started working on him. And Talia Ramirez was the other chief on the other side of the helicopter. And she had a round that was double fed in her M4. Like they were firing M4s out of the window because they went black on ammunition on rockets and 50 cal. That was the weapon system on the Kiowa, but they went black on ammunition and they were physically firing 5.56 out of their little side window, and her weapon had jammed, and then they got shot down. But whoever took her out of the helicopter told me that she had a giant like dent in her helmet and that she was dead, you know, as soon as they got there. Like she had died from the impact. And you know, SF comes in, Rangers come in, SEALs come in, like there's frickin' 40 aircraft in the air, like shit's getting crazy. When a bird goes down in combat, it's called a fallen angel, and all resources, all of NATO's resources go to that element, and it's the same thing if somebody goes missing. So everything Afghanistan has, we have now, and all those soft forces are showing up. They're clearing villages all around us, man. Like I'm watching this whole thing happen from my gunner's hatch. The Rangers go in, clear this whole village for 2-3 hours. Like they come out with like a line of military age males, all bagged and tagged, right? They all get loaded up and sent off to get questioned about what happened and stuff. And an ANA commander, Afghan National Army commander, he had these dudes like on their knees, like, and he's ripping them up in Arabic, man. I'm assuming, I don't speak Arabic, but I'm assuming he's like, who did it? Who's it gonna be? Who's gonna confess? Like, I'll fucking kill one of you. And he took one behind the building, man, and he shot this dude 50 frickin' feet from me. Like he took a Taliban dude that had a bag on his head, ripped the bag off and shot him in the back of the head. And like, I didn't see it, but I heard it and I knew what he just did. And then he came back and I'm assuming everybody started talking once they seen that. The ANA are ruthless, man. Like there are no rules when it comes to the ANA, and that's their country. They're allowed to do whatever they want. And they sure as hell did that day. I don't know, 6-7 hours, we end up not getting attacked because all those soft forces came in and did what they were supposed to do. And it's midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and everybody's coming back to the truck. And I'm like smoking a cigarette. I'm finally out of the gunner's hatch, you know, after being up there all night. And my platoon sergeant, that fiery Mexican, Sergeant Sanchez, he's going to get in the MRAP, and I'm like, shitty day, huh, Sergeant? That's a stupid cherry thing to say. You know, like, it's obviously shitty. And he goes, shut the fuck up and get in your hatch. And I was like, roger that. Like, immediately after I said that, like, I knew what he was about to say. That was a dumb thing to say. I think he said, it was either this time or maybe another time, but he said, I hate zipping up Americans. He's like, there's nothing worse than zipping up Americans. And I agree, man. There's no better feeling when you're in a firefight and you eliminate the threat and all your boys are okay. Like, there's no better high than that. And there's no worse low than losing somebody. Like, those are two polar opposites of the life of a combat infantryman, you know, like. So we drop back in complete silence, man, and we do those little missions for the rest of the deployment. Like, we go out 14 days at a time and we come back, and now it's time to go home. We load all our stuff up and we start driving back to the FOB Shank. Word comes out about these pilots. So it was Chief Warrant Officer Montenegro and Chief Warrant Officer Talia Ramirez. And this is a couple weeks after the mission had happened. And I remember seeing a picture of Talia Ramirez, and she was like a 23, 24-year-old girl. Like, she was a girl, dude. To this day, if anybody ever asks me what like affects you from combat or whatever, and other than depression, like, it's her. Because in my brain, like, women aren't supposed to die in combat. Like, that's not supposed to be a thing. Every September, man, when that day comes around, I try to tell her story and share their story about what they're doing, because it was awesome, man. Like, they were doing their job and supporting the ANA and like probably saved some lives that day. It bothers me so much. Out of any other KIA that we experienced that deployment, that one hurt the most, man. It just didn't compute in my head that she died. Like, once I put a face to the pilot, right? Like, everybody that actually seen her that day was saying like, yeah, she's like a small stature female, you know, 100-something pounds. But then when I put a face to it, man, she was a mom. Like Jose Montenegro was a dad, and it just bothered me, man. It still sticks to me to this day, I guess I could say. We do the same thing. We run missions. Now it's time to go, and we fly to Bagram. And I like to read, man. Like, I know I told you earlier that like I don't like school or anything, but the only reason I don't like school is because I didn't trust adults. And when an adult would tell me, hey, read this, it's gonna make you more smart, I would say, I don't want to because you're telling me to, like, in my head. But during our transition, like out of FOB Shank to Bagram, we were at Bagram for like 14 to 21 days. Like, it was a long time. So I'm just like killing books left and right, you know, all like nonfiction war books, you know, the book called War by Sebastian Junger about the 173rd in Afghanistan, 2007. Kill Bin Laden was another book that I read like during this brief time period. And we had gotten a new section leader probably about 2 months before that, and his name, Staff Sergeant Franklin Woods. He's like one of my best friends, so I'm gonna drop his name. And he tosses me this book, man, and it's called The Outpost by Jake Tapper, the CNN like investigative journalist guy. And I start reading, I'm like, oh, Roger Sergeant, thank you. And I start reading this book. And Sergeant Woods was one of them men on July 27th that was super calm in the craziest of conditions. Like, he was somebody I looked towards, but this man had anger issues, dude. Like, he would flip out over the smallest thing, like, but if there was a gunfight going on, like, he was super calm, and you know, that was your guy. If the bullets are flying and you're next to Sergeant Woods, like, you're gonna be fine, and he's gonna make competent decisions, and you're gonna live. And he tosses me this book. He's like, you like to read, Ski, go ahead and read this. So I'm reading this book, and I know nothing about Sergeant Woods. I know he's got a 10th Mountain patch on his right side, and that's where he came from. And I'm reading this book, and in the first, it's 3 books in one. So the first book is 10th Mountain, second book is 173rd, third book is 4th ID. And it's all about this Nuristan, Kunar province. Like, if you ever seen the documentary Restrepo, like, it's this area of Afghanistan. And I'm like 200 pages in, and I get to a sentence, and it's like, oh, the sniper element consisting of Specialist Franklin Woods, this and that, this and that. And I like, kind of like, is that this? You know, I don't know, maybe not. And I start reading it more, and I'm putting like 2 and 2 together. Well, what happened on that deployment with Woods was they were on top of a hill and got surrounded by the enemy because they needed a speedball. And when they dropped the speedball, they did it during the day, and they gave away their position, and they're a sniper element. And the Taliban surrounded them and attacked them, and that's where Sergeant First Class Jared Monty, I believe. I know it's Monty, but I think his first name's Jared, received the Medal of Honor. And Franklin Woods was on that mission. And Sergeant Monty put himself at risk by trying to drag a saw gunner to cover and got hit by an RPG. Got up, tried to do it again, got hit by another RPG, killed. After that second one, the saw gunner was still alive. They called the bird in when the bird got there. As the medic was ascending back to the bird with the specialist, the bird got hit by a rocket-propelled grenade and fell, killed everybody. They named the hospital after that medic on Bagram. And this book is explaining all this to me. And I kind of like, I remember there's this moment where I kind of just like lowered my book and I looked at Woods and I was like, oh, like it all makes sense. Like why you're so good at what you do. And there's this other name in this book that keeps coming up, and it's Cunningham. And Sergeant Cunningham, badass dude. There's one part of the book where he like ties a Swiss seat to get this lieutenant, and he like rappels down this to lieutenant. The lieutenant's KIA, but he like ties himself off, and the truck's pulling back up. And I finished this book in like 2 days, man. It's a long book. I was staying up for hours reading this book every day because we're transitioning. We're eating, lifting, and I'm reading. I finished the book and I walk up to Sergeant Woods and I'm like, hey man, I finished that book. Like, that's badass. Is that you in there? And he's like, yeah, that's me. You know, this book just came out and I know you like to enjoy it and stuff. And I'm like, dude, that Cunningham, your platoon sergeant, like he's a bad motherfucker. And he goes, you want to meet him? He's here right now. And I'm like, what? Yeah, I want to meet him. So we ride the bus over to who's coming into Afghanistan, and that was Sergeant Cunningham and his boys. And I met some friends from basic training and stuff who were with 10th Mountain. And here's Sergeant Cunningham, the dude I was just reading about in the flesh. And he's like, what's up, man? And I'm like, hey, Sergeant. But in my head, I'm like, fuck, it's Cunningham. Like, this dude's a badass. Like, he is a hero, man, in that book. So we redeploy back to Italy after that. And Sergeant Woods and I we start building a friendship. And to this day, he's still one of my best friends. I was in Italy for maybe another year. Just doing training, you know, raising little killers, trying to get them ready for war. So next thing, I transitioned to the 82nd Airborne. I get there. In the Army, we always say, like, your first unit is like the unit you'll never get that same feeling of, the first unit you deploy with. I get to the 82nd and immediately I'm like in disgust. I'm like, the 82nd sucks. It's not the 173rd. Fayetteville, North Carolina sucks. Like, so the platoon I went to, they're training in Polk, so I didn't get to meet them for a couple days. And I actually went to the 82nd with a buddy of mine from the 173rd. Shout out Tejas, I think he's like a first sergeant in the 173rd nowadays. But Tejas and I show up to this company and we're both kind of in the same mindset that we don't like this place. And the boys get back from Fort Polk, you know, from the training rotation. We finally meet the platoon that we're going to, you know, the platoons that we're going to. And they're getting off the bus and everybody's just sad. And immediately, like, something doesn't click. We're like, you boys were just in the field for 30 days. Like, it's time to come back and party and like work hard, play hard, right? Like, you should be super excited. And everybody's just unmotivated, sad. Like, there's no camaraderie in this whole company. Like, so Taze and I kind of told ourselves and our guys, like, hey, we're gonna turn this whole organization like around and bring some motivation and some camaraderie and stuff to you guys, like, because that's what we had in Italy and that's what we want to have here. And we worked hard, man, for 2 straight years on turning stuff around in that company, and we did, dude. We were having barbecues at each other's houses. We were like taking the guys out for like stuff outside of work, and people started growing together and stuff. But what I seen from the very beginning was a group of soldiers that knew what they were doing to look like they know what they're doing, like standing in formation, like parade pretty, like they were very parade pretty. And I'm coming from, I know how to teach you to kill people and come home. And Tejas was the same way, and that's the way we kind of trained our guys. So my squad, 2 guys went to Ranger Battalion, 1 dude's a Special Forces Green Beret, 1 became an officer, and 1 got out of the Army. Like, that was my squad in the 82nd, and I'm pretty proud of those dudes to this day. Tried to get out of Bragg as fast as I could, so when the drill sergeant thing like came around, I was excited about it. I was like, get me the hell out of here. And I missed a deployment, like, but I didn't know that deployment was coming. If I knew that deployment was coming, I would have probably tried to defer my drill sergeant orders somehow, because they were going to where I was in Afghanistan the first time, but I didn't know about it. So I went to drill sergeant school. Drill sergeant school is like super dumb. Like, it's basic training, but now you're an NCO, and it kind of gut checked me and made me realize I didn't know as much as I think I did when it came to doctrine and book knowledge and how to march around a platoon and stuff like that. So for 8 weeks, put up with drill sergeant school, ended up slowly kind of liking the idea of being a drill sergeant. Like, the drill sergeant school thing worked, and it motivated me into being as good as I can be, and I graduated with honors. I almost graduated as honor graduate. Like, I really put my best foot forward. Immediately once we graduated, I started being a drill sergeant. I walked in to my company, and I'm just a buck sergeant. I'm a promotable E5, but I'm a buck sergeant. I'm not a staff sergeant yet. I meet my, senior drill sergeant. He's like, oh, an infantryman. Oh, so you don't know like what you're doing, huh? And I'm like, what? Like, I know what I'm doing. Like, what do you want me to do? So from the very moment, because I was a drill sergeant at Fort Jackson. Like, Fort Jackson is all the support MOSs, but per regulation in Fort Jackson, every platoon, every company of drill sergeants needs 4 infantrymen. So like, we're kind of important, because we know what we're doing when it comes to shooting and tactics, and that's what basic training is teaching the basics very well. So I made it my mission to be the best drill sergeant I could, man. And there were cycles, and my senior hated this shit. The one that was like, oh, can you even spell infantry? Like, that's how he looked at infantrymen. I made it my mission to make the best, like, killers that were going to be like supply specialists. Like, these kids were motivated, man. They'd get t-shirts with like, God bless the infantry on it. And they'd come up with like little slogans when I dismissed the platoon, and they'd just be like, follow me, or something like that, an infantry saying. And my senior drill sergeant would chew my ass about that. He'd pull me in the office and be like, hey, why the fuck's the platoon saying God bless the infantry when we call them to the attention? And I'm like, sorry, I have no idea, man. They did that. And I was kind of like accidentally really good at being a drill sergeant, even though like I was proven to my senior that I am pretty good at what I'm doing. Like, I enjoyed seeing the motivation that I was providing to these kids. But at the same time, like, I would fuck with them like every single day, man. I would tell them before I left, I'd say, what is gonna happen tomorrow morning at 4:59 and 59 seconds? And they would say, like, you're gonna kick in the door, drill sergeant, and then you're gonna inspect the bay. And I'd say, you're goddamn right. Good night. And I put them to bed and close it. And 4:59, 59 seconds, I'm kicking that fucking door in. And they're, A's! And nobody, you can hear a fucking mouse fart, dude. And I'd inspect that bay, and every single day I would find a deficiency. But there was one cycle where I walked into the bay, and 4:59, 59 seconds, boom, and I'm inspecting this bay. I'm going through the bay, and there's nothing wrong. Like, there's not, like, the toilet paper is pulled down to the same length in every single stall. Every single stall door is exactly at 45 degrees. Every single, cleaning supplies is like dress right dressed alphabetically. Like, wall lockers are fucking perfect. I fucked them up for being too good. Like, I destroyed this platoon for like 30 minutes because they did it too well. And they made a mistake by doing everything too well. And those are the type of mind games I played, man. I did it because after a while, you get bored of teaching the same thing. Like you're teaching the exact same thing for 10 weeks at a time. And as soon as you can start to stand these kids a little bit, they leave, graduate, and you get a brand new group of fucking shitbags who don't even know how to go to the position of attention. So you find little games like that where you play. My other infantry buddies and I, we would play a game every cycle to where we would tell their platoon without them knowing that there was something wrong with the drill sergeant. One time, my buddy pulls me aside and he said, hey, Ski, and this is like day 2 of basic training. He's like, hey, I told your entire platoon that you have severe PTSD, and if you ever start having a tic that you're about to explode, and to make sure if they ever see this tic that they behave, because I'm really close to like losing my shit and like, murdering all of them or something. So he told me this and I'm like, oh, I can run with this. This is gonna be entertaining. So day 1, I'm going over like the M4 and I'm like, all right, privates, check it out. This is the M4, it's semi-automatic, magazine fed, 5.5. And just silence across the whole platoon. And like all of them just kind of like perked up and their eyes got a little bit higher. And I was like, hey, sorry about that, privates. Like, anyway, like I said, it's 31 inches long and it fires this. And they started paying attention more whenever I'd had these little tics, and it worked. And when it came time to PT or shoot, like they're shooting really well because they're paying attention to all these classes. And I'm like not having any disciplinary issues. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fucking run with this. So I do it for the rest of the cycle and it goes super well. I never like freak out on them, but they always thought. And the day before graduation, I always had this thing where I'd sit them down in the kill zone, which is the center of the bay, and I'd let them ask me whatever they wanted. Whatever they wanted to ask me, they would ask me. And once I figured out this little trick of playing games, their hands would like shoot up in the air and I already knew what they were about to say. They'd be like, Drill Sergeant, do you got severe PTSD or were you kidding? And I'd be like, the whole fucking thing's a lie, privates. Like, and they'd be like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I'd be like, shut the fuck up, remain disciplined, shut the fuck up before I do flip out. And I had a technique that I also used like every once in a while for sleepers, like privates that are sleepy right at the beginning of the cycle. I'd be in the classroom and I'd be teaching and I would see Private Smith or whatever falling asleep because he's tired, right? Because it's the first 2 days of basic training. And I'd walk up to him really calm. I'd stop doing what I'm doing. I'd be like, all right, privates, check it out. This is a compass. You need to carry this around. And I'd be like, oh, we have a sleepy private. And I'd say it just like that. And I'd walk up to him and I'd say, hey, Private Smith, you need to go to your bay and you need to secure your mattress, your blankets, and your pillow. And they'd like wake up like, oh, what? And then I'd fucking slam on the desk and be like, go get your fucking mattress, go get your pillow and your blankets and bring them in here. They'd go, battle buddies go, secure what I asked them to secure. They'd drag it into the classroom. And I had a table in front of my classroom. And I would make them take that mattress, make their bunk on top of this table, and I'd make them get into bed and suck their thumb and go to sleep. And you can imagine how embarrassing this is for a private, right? Like he's there, he's now in front of 65 of his friends who are gonna be his friends, and he's like having to make his bed, but they're very hesitant because they don't know how serious I am. And they would be like, and I'd be like, hurry the fuck up and make your bed, private. You have to take a nap. I have a class to teach. Can I teach my class? All right, roger that. And I'd go back to teach my class. They'd get in bed. I'd tuck them in. I'd make them suck their thumb. And I'd tell them like really quiet, like, close your fucking eyes. Close your eyes. And everybody hears this. This is all just show. This is all, I don't care if that private sleeps, but I'm trying to teach other privates not to sleep in class. One time I was doing this little trick and I had a kid, sleeping, sucking his thumb. And my first sergeant comes in and he's like, Drill Sergeant, can I speak to you? And I'm like, yeah, roger that, First Sergeant. And I run outside and he's like, hey, what the hell are you doing? I was like, teaching privates not to sleep in class. And he goes, I didn't see this. And he walked away. Dude, I rode that fine line of I'm being ethical and I'm not being ethical. I rode it pretty well as a drill sergeant. It worked. The results would come in for PT. My platoon was the best. The results would come in for shooting. My platoon did the best. We won everything. We had the highest scores and everything. So my little system that I figured out worked, and I entertained myself at the same time. Being a drill sergeant, it's a 3-year assignment. I'm on like year 2 now, and I fucked up, man. I started dating somebody that was in the military, and you're never supposed to shit where you eat. And I just broke that rule for this, opportunity. And it was probably one of the worst mistakes I had ever made in my life because it was a toxic relationship from the beginning. I mean, like day 2, I should have seen these red flags, and I didn't. I ignored them. I just kept pushing forward. And this is where I kind of like, I got into this routine of coming home every night after being, drill sergeanting, and I'd start drinking, and I would drink like pretty high proof IPA beers. And it started to get like, it was 3 beers at first, and now it's like 7 beers. Now it's a 12 pack every night. And I'm working like 16 hours a day, right? Like, so it was getting to the point where I was abusing alcohol and then going to work the next day. I knew what I was doing, but I was doing it anyway. I was conscious and aware because I was in this fucking horrible relationship. But somehow I got the opportunity to go be an instructor at the United States Army Drill Sergeant Academy. And the academy is a very prestigious position. Like there's like 30 of them out of the whole entire Army. If your paperwork says you work there, like you're gonna make Sergeant Major as long as you keep your nose clean. So I go try out, I pass everything somehow. I get invited to actually go into the training program and become a drill sergeant leader, a DSL is what they call. So some time goes by between me transitioning from just being a regular basic training drill to this opportunity, right? And just for example of how toxic this relationship was, I have the most important opportunity the next day. Like it's like Sunday and my first day is Monday. And I made the decision like, hey, I'm not gonna drink, like I'm gonna, stay sober for this, and I'm gonna use this opportunity to keep moving forward and kind of like working on myself. She said some shit like, why are you pressing your uniforms, and why'd you get like a haircut like today? Like, are you gonna fuck those females at the Drill Sergeant Academy? And like, I had never even looked at another woman, brother. Like, but these comments were daily. Like, and they started off cute, and it just kind of drove me into this spiral of like hating myself because I didn't understand, like, I'm doing everything I can to provide for you, your son, and I'm maintaining another home. So like financially, like I'm strapped, dude. Like this chick is just riding the wave of my finances right now, and I'm the one struggling, and I've been doing this for like 2 years at this point, I drank all night and was late the next day to the academy, and I made up some excuse because we got in a huge fight. Because I'm like, bitch, I'm providing for you. Like, why would you accuse me of any of that? The kind of like, the way the academy works when you get there is it's kind of like no rules. Because all these NCOs are leaving their families, and you get put in barracks, and you're in basic training, but you get the weekends off, and there had been rumors about people sleeping with their DSLs and stuff like that, and everybody knew that. So I understand why she said it, but to cause a whole fight over it the day before I have one of the most important jobs of my life, like it just kind of spiraled me further and further into depression, man. And I guess I quit being a DSL before I started being a DSL. Like I wasn't going to the gym, like the days were short. I'm working 16, 17 hours a day as a basic training drill sergeant. As I'm training to be a DSL, like I'm working like 4 and then going home. And they're expecting me, because when I interviewed, I was working out 2-3 times a day. I was studying my knowledge or whatever. And instead of going to work out or instead of going to run, I'm going home to drink. Like she's at work till 10 o'clock at night. I'm gonna go home and eat some food, and then I'm gonna drink till fucking 11. I think it was me putting forth my best effort in this relationship and getting accused of constantly, I gave this girl everything I had. Every day or every other day, we're getting into full-on arguments about me cheating on her, and I had never cheated on her. So that made me feel like I wasn't good enough, even though I was putting in everything I had. I raised her son, dude. Like I'm like taking him to football games and, trying to teach him how to be a good boy, so that way he's a good man and stuff. And it almost felt like no matter what I did, like I wasn't good enough, and I was always trying to impress her. Like there was nothing before this relationship that could have like the thought of any negativity, like I used the Army to get my stress out when it came to like working out, or I would go to a school, I'd go to air assault school, or I'd go to this school, and my mind was always occupied with something. And, you know, once I got into the relationship, like obviously, like you're gonna give some time to your significant other, you know? And once she kind of started kind of like pointing out my flaws and stuff, that's when I really started spiraling into depression, man. I guess I just didn't feel good enough. Even though I'm about to be a drill sergeant leader, one of the most prestigious assignments as an infantryman, you know, like this job that I'm about to do is gonna guarantee me the rank of Sergeant Major of E9, as long as I do it right and I do it well. And, you know, I just, instead of concentrating on my job, I just concentrated on drinking and walked into the commandant's, you know, office one day and I said, Sergeant Major, this isn't for me. Here's my letter of resignation. I'll just go back to be a drill sergeant for the remainder of my time back down the hill, and don't put me in that same company I was in. Because I said, I'm in a relationship with somebody in that company. And he said, okay. And he sent me to another company. And bro, that hurt, man. Up to that point, I had never failed nothing. Like I was a rock star in the Army. Like anything I did, like I would shit on other people when it came to anything in the Army. So I went back to just being a line drill, and, you know, I wanted to get to know everybody I worked with. The drinking was pretty severe at this point. Like it's, you know, 15, 18 IPAs a night, and I'm still waking up and going to be a drill sergeant all day and functioning somehow. And I'm still doing a good job because I'm pretty fucking good at this job. But I have this like dark side that nobody knows about, you know? So I invite everybody I started working with to a barbecue at my place for Cinco de Mayo, 2018. I'm like, hey, I want to get to know all you guys. So like we graduate this weekend, so everybody's going to be off on Saturday. Everybody come to my house and I'll throw a party, and we can all kind of like get to know each other. So that way you can get to know me and like my family, and I can get to know you and your family, and we can like grow. I was always trying to do that. You know, I always wanted like a team for whoever I worked with. And I throw a huge party, man. There's like 20, 30 people there, you know, but the entire time, like this girl I was in a relationship with, like she's just giving me attitude for doing what I'm doing, you know, like, and I don't get it. Like, I'm not doing anything wrong, you know, like, you know, everybody drinks, obviously, and we get into a fucking huge fight. And I wake up the next morning, she's yelling at me, saying she's done, like, because apparently I talked to another female, right? Like, I don't know what I did. I was drinking, you know, but I know it wasn't with ill intention. I wasn't like talking to this female trying to get her number or something. It was probably somebody, and and she's like, this isn't gonna work. Like, you need to leave. And I had another house at the time. Like I said, I was, you know, paying for our house, and I was paying for my other house that was across town. So I said, you know what, fuck you, I'm out. And I went to my other house, man, and my roommate lived in that house. He was paying me rent, the one that we were in combat together. I get there and it's like a mess, and, you know, nothing's organized. The whole house is like super dirty. So I clean the whole house, and I'm drinking, and I get into this routine of just, you know, my depression's severely coming out at this point. And one night, man, he's at work, and I don't know why, but I had a whole bottle of sleeping pills, and like I call the VA hotline for suicide, and I'm like, hey, I'm about to do this. And they're like, no, don't do it. And I just said, like, fuck you. I hung up, and I just swallowed this. Like that, dude. I have not had a suicidal thought my entire life. This spiral that I've been going down for the last 9 months in my life led me to this moment, and I'm over it. I'm done. Like, fuck everything. So I take the pills, an entire bottle of Ambien, and I go to my backyard. And I just start drinking, man. Like, I'm already drinking at this point. Oh, and I laid out all my guns on my bed, you know, just in case this shit didn't work. Like, I was gonna wake up and make sure that it worked, right? I wake up like 4 days later in the hospital to an incubator getting ripped out of my throat. 10 people around me with fucking clipboards and checklists in white coats, and nothing's making sense at this moment. I'm not supposed to be here. Start kind of remembering sort of what happened, but I'm still very unaware of what's going on. I like feel my face and I have a beard. So I realized like, oh, we've been here for a little while, and it turned out to be like 4 days. And the doctor comes in and he said, hey, your brother's on the way. Is there anything you need at the moment? And I said, I just need to know what happened. And then I started remembering what happened. And a psychiatrist came in and she said, what'd you do? And I said, oh, I just drank and I took my sleeping pills, and that's what caused me to. And I don't know if they knew I was lying, because they put like somebody in the room to watch me while I slept, like suicide watch or whatever. Then my first sergeant comes, you know, a day or two later, and he said, come on, you're coming with me. And he escorts me back to battalion. And the whole time he's like lecturing me about how I fucked up. Like, and this is my brand new first sergeant, by the way. I've known him for maybe a week and a half. You know, making me feel like shit for what I just did. I'm not looking for handouts or sympathy or whatever, but it's kind of confusing in that situation, you know? You're like, okay, so the guy that's supposed to take care of me, I'm a nuisance because I tried to kill myself. And he like takes me to Sergeant Major, and this is my brand new Sergeant Major. And my Sergeant Major's like, oh, I had to make a phone call to the general and say that you died. And my Sergeant Major's now chewing me out for what I did. And then I go talk to a shrink, which I mentioned to this female in my life at this point. I told her like a month before this, like, hey, I need to go talk to somebody. And she was like, well, if you go talk to somebody, it's gonna ruin your career. And that's kind of the stigma of mental health in the Army, right? And I was like, oh, you're right, you know, maybe I won't. And it led to this point, you know, of me attempting to take my fucking life. You know, all intentions, that's what I wanted to do, whether I knew it or not. The only reason it didn't happen is because my buddy forgot like a uniform, and he came back from his 24-hour shift and found me in the backyard, like pale with next to no pulse. So now I'm talking to the shrink, and I'm telling her like, yeah, like I got guns in the house, you know, this and that. So they put me in the barracks for like 48 to 72 hours. My brother came in, like I'm on like suicide watch or whatever. But after that 72 hours was up, like I'm back on a firing range. I'm actively on a firing range like 4 or 5 days later, and we're qualifying. And my phone rings, man, and I look, and it's my roommate, the one who pretty much saved my life. And I answered my phone. I said, what's up, man? Is everything okay? And he said, hey, man, Deming killed himself last night. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, man, I'm getting the details now. I'll talk to you when you get home. So like Deming was like, Deming Woods and I were like best friends after deployment. Like we hung out all the fucking time. He went to the 101st. I went to the 82nd. I went to be a drill sergeant. He was still at the 101st. So I'm getting all these text messages and shit, and like emotionally, I'm a fucking wreck, man. Like I don't know what to think. Like I just tried to do that. So do I feel sorry for him and his family? Like what's going on here? I walk up to this first sergeant, and I'm like, hey, first sergeant, one of my best friends just, you know, killed himself, and I need to go to Kansas for the funeral. And he was like, you ain't going nowhere. Like, no. And I ended up telling him like, hey, I'm gonna go, and you're not gonna stop me. Somehow my leave form got signed. In the next couple days, we take off. Me and my roommate and another kid that was a drill sergeant that we served with in Italy together, and we went from Fort Jackson, South Carolina to like outside of Kansas City for his memorial, man. We all meet at a bar that first night, and like this dude everybody came to see him. You know, that's what type of person he was. Everybody's there, and I remember everybody was inside the bar, and I like said what's up to everybody, and my roommate knows what just happened with me, but he's not talking about nothing, you know, and I appreciate that. So I just kind of find myself outside the bar at this pub table, and I'm drinking a beer. I'm not supposed to be drinking, but I'm drinking anyway. And one of my really good friends from Italy, he comes out and he sits at the table and he's like, yo, Ski, what's up, man? You good? And I'm like, no. And he's like, why? And I told him why. And he said, bro, 2 weeks ago, I stuck a pistol in my mouth, and the only reason I didn't pull the trigger is because I was afraid of who was gonna watch my dog. This whole moment of like really? Like, I just did this. And he's like, well, I just did this. And then we go to the funeral for Ryan, and I'm talking to this guy, Cooley, and he brings his fucking son to the funeral, and a month later, he kills himself. So like this dude that just brought his son to a funeral to like say goodbye to a friend that he served with, 2 weeks, a month later, fucking shoots himself in the face. And I just remember thinking like, what the fuck is going on? Why are we all doing this? It started settling in pretty hard. I was going to classes and shit. Like, but I was lying in the classes. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm not drinking. And I'm telling them like, oh, how much this therapy's like helping me. And it wasn't. Like, I just didn't want to get in trouble in the Army. Me and this girl ended up splitting for good. And I got a place in Columbia, South Carolina, just me and my dog. Just kind of maintain that lifestyle, you know, like I'm drinking, like I don't have a goal in life. And I'm getting out of the Army in like 9 months. And I get out of the Army. It's COVID. COVID hits that last 9 months I was in the Army. So I was in operations, which means I was like just in charge of planning shit. And my sergeant major and my colonel, they took care of me, man. They're good people. And when COVID hit, they were like, hey, like they knew what happened, you know, and exactly what I'd been through and stuff. And I opened up to them when I was up at battalion, and they took care of me. They're like, hey, go work from home. COVID's hit. We're working like half the people here, half the people back there. Just go take care of yourself, whatever you need to do. And I just took that as like, I'm just gonna drink and, you know, not make a plan and whatever. But somehow I pulled myself out of it, man, towards the end. I got out November of 2020. You know, I was just gonna go back into being a rancher or whatever, because that's what I was doing previously, cattle work. And I got this awesome opportunity to move out to the middle of West Virginia and like take care of this property and build log cabins and kind of just like take care of people and stuff. And it didn't pay like $18,000 a year, but you got a free place, free food. So my dog and I move out there. Eventually that takes me to Nevada. While I was in West Virginia, one of the first groups of people that I hosted at this recreation ranch was my girl and her friends. And she showed up and she's like 4'11", super fiery, educated, like, and I'm being professional and I'm not even thinking about relationships, right? Like I'm just trying to focus on me, and you know, I got this opportunity to like clear my head and it's working. Like I'm starting like a shooting where you come to me and I teach you how to shoot, and it's like down my level of expertise, and we're walking through the woods and I'm teaching people how to like read a compass and read a map, like, and it's all kind of playing into this recreation ranch. And Tim Pool shows up to my firing range and I'm like shooting his 50 cal Barrett, and you know, like I'm on TV and like, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like I like what I'm doing here. Like it's going well. And then this 4'11" fiery, you know, woman shows up in my life, and I'm being super respectful. Like I'm like, yes, ma'am, let me get that for you and stuff. And she's staying at the main cabin. I got my own cabin. And she said something along the lines of, what did she say? She was like, I haven't slept in 2 days because of a gentleman that was running that cabin. He gets up at like 4 a.m, starts making coffee, doing dishes, and it's really loud in the cabin. If you're in a real log cabin, everything echoes. And she's like, I haven't slept in 2 days. She goes, Dan, do you bang in the morning? She said those words. And I'm like, what? No, like I'm caught off guard because but she didn't mean it that way, but that's the way she said it. So everybody busts out laughing. She's like, no, I didn't mean it that way. She was like, but I'm sleeping with you tonight. And she did it again, right? Like she mistakenly said, hey, I'm gonna sleep with you, but she didn't mean either one of those two things, but that's how everybody took it. So she comes over and I say, hey, this is my room, you know, sleep here and stuff. And we ended up talking till like, I don't know, till she left the next day till like 10 in the morning. Neither one of us went to sleep. We stayed in the living room and got to know each other. And the next weekend she like brought me a birthday cake, and it was really sweet because she had to drive like 4 hours and it was my birthday. And she came out to Nevada with me. We lived out in Nevada. I built 2 big ass log cabins out there. You know, she did her thing, working out there as a traveling kind of in the medical field. Eventually the owner and I kind of came to differences, and I said, hey, I can't work here anymore unless you pay me more. And he said, well, I can't pay you more. So we moved back to Virginia, West Virginia area. And I started working in the oil field, and she did her thing. I loved what I was doing at the ranch because I was like building stuff with my hands, and it required a brain, and it was a lot of thinking and stuff. It required a lot of effort from my end in order to make that job go. Once I stopped doing that and I went into the oil field in northern Pennsylvania, West Virginia area, I was working 30 days at a time, 12 hours a day, 14 days off. And you can teach anybody to work in the oil field. It's just very physically demanding, and it's very demanding of your time. So I think I was on like my 3rd or 4th hitch is what you call it in the oil field. And so it's been 6 months at this point, and we decided to take a trip back to Nevada to get the rest of our stuff, because when we came to Virginia, we left a bunch of stuff in Nevada. So she plans this entire trip back to Nevada to get our stuff, and this is where I'm gonna introduce her to the family, and we're gonna stop at all these cool places, man. And throughout the whole trip, like, I'm just quiet, I'm in my own, and she's never really seen this side of me, right? Like, I'm always very happy-go-lucky, I'm very motivated. Like, she's only known the Danny the creative thinker Danny. She doesn't know this kind of dark side of Danny that likes to poke his head around if he's bored and not stimulating whatever that is that I need. And we're driving back from Nevada, man. And she asked me, she said, she knew I was, you know, hurting. And she said, if you could do anything that you want for work and make money, what would you do? And we're driving on I-80, it's the middle of the night, man, and probably 20, 30 miles go by, and I'm like, that's a silly question. I've never really thought about that before, you know. I'm just here to make money, provide, you know, hopefully we have some kids one day, and I'm gonna do that for the rest of my life. That's what I'm thinking. But I thought about her question, I really did, and I thought about what would make me truly happy, and I said I would build furniture and do something about veteran suicide. That's what I told her, and immediately, her being her, she was like, do it. And that's, how do you go about even starting to do that, right? So I was like, whatever, like, brushed off this conversation. We get back home, I go back to the oil field. 30 days later, I come home and she's like, we're not gonna make it if this is how you're gonna be. Because this isn't the guy I met a year ago. You can't be this person, and you got to find whoever I met a year ago. We bought a house last year. Right before we bought a house, she drugged me to church on Easter Sunday, 2023. We walk into church. I do it. I go to church because she asks me to go. We've never been to church together before. I'm not a religious person. I've dabbled in it, but I've never really gone to church, never really taken it seriously. We walk into church. It's Easter Sunday, the church is packed, it's a Christian church, so there's a band up there, they're singing, like, it's beautiful. Like, I'm having this moment kind of take over, and the pastor starts doing his thing, and he's talking about all this stuff, you know, let Jesus into your life, let him guide you, let him show you the path. Like, Jesus is wisdom, the Bible is wisdom, and like, all these answers that I've been searching for, like, this preacher is telling me, like, if you let Jesus take control of your life, you're gonna get the answers that you need. And right, like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was lost, I was miserable. I was working fucking 12 hours a day for 30 days at a time. Like, my relationship was failing. Like, it's a horrible, like, I'm going down the same path I was going, like, as I was a drill sergeant when, you know, all that crap happened. I just break down and start crying, man, right next to her. She's 4'11", she's tiny. So I'm thinking she's not even noticing, right? Like, I'm really living in this moment of kind of accepting that I'm gonna do this. And it was scary, man, and I was vulnerable, and it was Easter Sunday, 2023. So the ceremony gets over or whatever, we go to lunch, and she was like, oh, what'd you think? And I said, you know, I'm thinking she didn't see any of that. She's never seen me like be in that state before. And I'm like, oh, it was good. You know, maybe we should go back. And she's like, you know, I seen you bawling your eyes out. Like, I don't want you to hide that from me. Like, it's a good thing. Like, it's what I did when I first went to church. And I'm like, I wasn't bawling. Like, you know, we ate lunch and we've been going back to church ever since. And I started praying for wisdom nightly. I started praying for guidance. I started, you know, you and I were talking about like kind of how we talk when we pray. And I'm the same way. I just talk, man. I'm just like, hey, man, it's me. I know I'm a piece of shit, but I need you to show me how I'm going to do this. And this was help veterans somehow with suicide. And I said, I need you to show me like how to do that and provide for my family at the same time. We buy a house. My neighbor invites me to the local like gun chapter, like sportsman shooting range. And my neighbor's like, hey, come here. So I go there, I meet this guy. He's a trooper in West Virginia. He's like, hey man, do you like bourbon? And I'm like, I just want to be friends. So yeah, I love bourbon. Like what's bourbon? It's whiskey. And I'm like, yeah. So he invites me to his house for like this bourbon club. And we're like really good friends. And he's like, hey, I take these bourbon barrels and I turn them into furniture. Do you want to help me? You have construction and background. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'll help you. I'll come over. I'm just looking for any excuse to be friends because this is a new place. I need friends. Like she needs friends. Like we need to have a little bit of normality in our life. And the same time that him and I kind of met and this bourbon thing started, we found out Jamie was pregnant. And we had been trying for like a year, dude, to get pregnant. So I give my life to the Lord Easter Sunday, 2023. We close on a house May 16th, 2023. I meet this dude like that shows me how to turn bourbon barrels into furniture. I tell him like, hey man, like this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do something for veteran suicide. Like, do you mind if I run with this? And he's like, yeah, man, like go for it. If you build something good, like I'll come over with you. And I'm like, fucking Roger that, dude. Like I'm running with this. So 9 months, for the past 9-10 months, that's what I've been doing, man. I've been taking bourbon barrels. I've been turning them into furniture, seeing how much money it's gonna take, like how much money it's gonna cost me for every piece of sandpaper, for every piece of furniture. And I built this entire website and I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I think God's telling me to keep doing it. So I'm gonna keep going. And every so often him and I get together to go hunting or something. And I'm like, hey man, check out the website. Like I'm running with this thing. And he's like, yeah. And then you and I get off the phone. The moment we hang up, he calls me just to check in. And I'm like, hey man, I'm going across the country to go promote this thing. And I think at that moment he was like, oh shit, like you really are like going for this. Like I'm doing this as a hobby. Like, yeah, man, do it. Like, let's go, let's do this, build that. And I came to the conclusion on how I can build stuff. I can, just like I told Jamie, I can build furniture. One of the biggest things I hated in the military is seeing my soldiers like go to like loan sharks, right? They'd go to a loan shark, sign a fucking 200% interest rate on a loan, and then be in debt for the rest of their life. And I was one of them, right? Like it took me 9 years to pay off a loan I got as an E1 private for like $500 because of the interest, and I could never pay it off enough or enough time. So some of the reasons veterans kill themselves, I know it's not all of it, but it's something I can like do right now. Some of the reason is financial struggles. You know, something happens in their life, they just don't have the money, they're too embarrassed to go to their leadership to do something, or they're too embarrassed to admit to their spouse that they don't have the money to do whatever. So I came up with this idea. I said, I'm gonna have like immediate financial assistance available to veterans. They call, get a hold of us, and through building furniture and building a social media community, we'll get donations and we'll just keep this managed by a CPA and vet them as soon as they call DD93 or, where are you currently at, where are you stationed, just a quick vetting process and get it taken care of, and then we'll get them financed up to a certain amount, right? With zero, they don't have to pay us back or anything. In the Army Emergency Relief, like you got to pay back the majority of the time. They only sometimes grant you grants, but you always have to pay it back. And then you have to go through your chain of command, and it's embarrassing. You can call my organization, which I'm dubbing the Battle Buddy Project, and you just get financed through us, and there's no issues. And eventually we scale the business, the furniture business, to the point where the furniture business is kind of doing its own thing, and we're funding the fund with the furniture business. All the revenue from the community we're building online is coming in to the funding, and also all the apparel from building this brand, which is Bourbon Brothers Furniture Company, or the BBFC project. And it's just kind of all just working in unison. I get to build furniture and help veterans at the same time. And I get to do this for the rest of my fucking life. And I'm not gonna get rich. How much furniture can me and somebody else really build? But we could scale, and we can get even bigger. Maybe the social media following thing gets even bigger. You inviting me here, giving me this opportunity, I think it's probably gonna help. And this vision that I've had in my head for the last 9 months, and my girl's in my ass every day, hey, you need to launch, you need to launch, you need to launch. And I'm like, it's not ready yet, it's not. And the moment I clicked all this together, I woke her up. She's pregnant as hell. It's 3 a.m. I'm grinding, dude. I walk into the bedroom, I wake her up, and I'm like, it's fucking ready. This is what I'm about to do. And we both sit up, and I tell her this plan, and she's like, oh my God. It's finally, I understand now. I get why you were taking so long to kind of launch this thing. And here we are, man. Bourbon Brothers Furniture Company. We're up and running. The website's 100%. The crowdfund's available right now. This initial boost will just be to provide for podcast equipment, so I could hire somebody else to keep up with the demand of the furniture. And we got apparel. 100% of the apparel is going to go in towards the fund, and you're going to be able to just see it because it's on GiveSendGo.com. And GiveSendGo is this organization that no matter what, they maintain your fund. And you're going to get to see once a month Bourbon Brothers Furniture Company with a $2,000 contribution, and I am going to contribute into this fund for the rest of my life. And whatever the CPA says, we'll do, but we're not going to be a non-for-profit or non-profit, a 501c, because I don't want to do that, because the 501c's that are out there, for the majority, we're not going to name any, but they take 90% to themselves, and they give 2-3% to the veterans. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to have a for-profit company that you can go to a website and you can see exactly where the money's going and who's donating the money to go into the fund. And that's what's going to hold me accountable to maintain the honesty of this whole operation. So I think that's super important to stay, honest and humble about this whole experience, and not because let's say this thing explodes and goes so far like I want it to. I want to be held accountable by the people watching this who donate or whatever. And I just want to fucking build furniture and help veterans for the rest of my life, man. And it doesn't matter how much money I make as long as my bills are paid. That's all I'm asking to do here. The website for the furniture is thebbfc.com, and on my website, the apparel's available there. You can read everything I just told you in a lot shorter form there. The Battle Buddy project, the BBFC project, the actual crowdfund is on there, and you just click, I think it says the BBFC project. You click that and it takes you to the GiveSendGo.com, which is the crowdfund. And you can donate there. You go to YouTube at Danny BBFC. I got a couple videos up right now and very few subscribers because this thing just launched last week. Throughout this process, that's where I'm gonna keep everybody informed. I'm gonna bring people on from my past, people like Sarnt Woods or somebody, and we're gonna do a podcast and just talk about what we talked about here in more detail. And eventually we're gonna get to the point where we are a suicide prevention technique, and people we save are going to come on the podcast and they're going to live and work out of my home. They're going to get cleared by proper medical personnel to get sober. They're going to, go through whatever medical they need, and then they're going to come to me, and we're going to maintain their sobriety through a live-in work apprenticeship program on how to build furniture, all while getting a living wage, a damn good living wage, food paid for, lodging paid for, and they could be there for as long as they need until they heal. And then we interview them and kick their ass back into society and watch them do great things. No, I just want to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, man. I'm not a very emotional person, and I got a little emotional there. It's those emotions that were running through me the entire time of building what I'm doing here. And I feel light now that I've shared this story with you. I feel good. I feel like happy, kind of like how I felt in church that day. So I just want to say thank you very much.